Welcome back, everybody. We are going to have the after show for the Tony Reed and Christian Hillbilly morality discussion that we just had, if you can call it a discussion. I think it was just a huge takedown of Christian Hillbilly myself, as the goal was to show that he's just an immoral sociopathic piece of shit. But, that's up to you guys to determine if you guys feel the same way. That's just my position, and I'm going to make it very clear. So we're having people come over from the old hangout. Some have migrated, some have not. I'll put the link at the Great Debate Community and also put it on the live chat. So come on in if you feel like coming in. Tony should be migrating over. Dragnot's going to be listening in. I want to just start off by getting your guys' feedback on how you think that conversation went. Was it, well, I don't want to say was it worth having, because obviously I was kind of, and I had to have the hangout because I was forced to, because of my commitment that I had. I don't think that I would ever again, however, but let's get your guys' review on it, of which, just your general opinion. Who did watch it? Marcus, I know you didn't have much of a chance to actually talk in the last hangout. Do you want to kind of throw in what you thought of it?
How's my sound? I've got a different mic going on here.
Awesome voice. Alrighty.
Well, I saw, I think, pretty much most of the last hangout, and I only hopped on at the last point there, but I was pretty busy, so I wasn't able to actually, pitch in much conversation. But it was great to listen to. I could say this, that just a few years ago I was in about the same spot that Jim was, belief wise.
You were a fundamentalist, young earth creationist, immoral piece of shit.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Did you wear a Batman costume?
I did not do that.
All right, so you're not in the same position as Hillbilly then.
That's true. I was not that illogical.
Well, I mean, I think it's a testimony for somebody to be like that and then move away from that position. I mean, it takes somebody who's intelligent to do that, right? I mean, we all have positions that are probably wrong, and when we recognize those positions and we move on from them, that's something that requires some kind of thought process, right? Were you raised that way, Marcus? I mean, was that something because of your upbringing, or was that conclusions you had arrived at by looking at young earth creationists' claims?
Oh, definitely not. No, I was totally brought up completely secluded from any other train of thought, any counter arguments. It was purely an indoctrination of my upbringing. And once I broke free of kind of the group I was in, kind of got away from my family a little bit, I immediately started questioning things and looking into them for myself.
Do you find that there is a kind of isolationism there, that when you have certain groups in young earth creationism that are completely unable to even articulate the young earth creationist quote unquote argument, and I use that term very loosely, that instead of giving them other types of ridiculous arguments to try to shore their argument up, like Dan Biddle did in his debunking evolution, what every Christian should know, at least he made an attempt to try to shore up some things. Do you think that some groups just say, you know what, don't talk to those evil evolutionists, or don't engage with them and don't be exposed to any of that stuff? Do you think there's like a sound echo chamber thing there?
Oh, absolutely. No, it was, you in the group, I guess you could call it the community of Southern Baptists that we were with. You were never really supposed to venture out of that, and if you did and had any questioning thoughts or whatever, you would refer back to your elders.
I think I've seen that a few times. People have told me very similar stories. We've seen it with Scientology, especially lately. They're actually even told not to even go on the internet because there's just so much information out there now. And I think the same thing runs into young earth creationism. There's so much information of how to destroy young earth creationism now that anybody that has a little bit of scientific ability can go and look at the arguments and go, yeah, I can explain why that argument is just complete crap, right?
Well, yeah, definitely. And yeah, when being brought up as a child, we weren't even allowed internet, period, at all, let alone, borderline Amish would be what I say, how I was raised. No, well, at least we didn't see, we didn't say we were Mennonite along those lines and in those kind of groups. But just like no internet. My parents especially did not even like things like computers or even a TV in the house.
Can I ask what state this was in?
Drunken.
Okay.
Virginia.
Well, that's not really, Virginia's not really known to be that radical of a state, is it?
Not really. There are groups of families and stuff in Virginia that have like close knit, their own little kind of backwoods society where they kind of don't socialize with especially internet culture or anything like that, but they kind of stay to themselves, to their own, like they won't even have an official church per se. They'll like home church, and that's, being brought up as a kid, we didn't even go to church. We had like home church thing,
Gosh, that's even worse, isn't it?
So it is definitely more rare in Virginia. But I was just recently I went out to Kentucky and I saw the Ark Encounter, and while we were there, there's a lot of Mennonites out in Kentucky because there was like 200 Mennonites like in like this huge group that was there at the encounter while we were.
Well, that had to be a
visiting.
factor when you put it there, I think, right? And by the way, I don't know what happened to Tony. He just seems to have vanished. But if Tony's listening and he wants a spot, he's gonna have to like let me know. I told him, when I was starting this, and I gave him the details. And also, somebody had actually donated to me by the name of who was this? I just looked here. Oh, Darby. I don't want to give her last name. Thank you. I don't know who you are, or if you use a pseudonym or whatever, but I did get your donation. Thank you very much. I appreciative of everything that people send to me, and I will add your first name, not your entire name, because I don't dox you, onto the master list of people that have donated on the Great Debate community page, because I keep a list of anybody who's even given $1, because I think it's very appropriate to acknowledge these people and to have a record of it, and it means a lot to me. So thank you. I want to put that out there. Real quick, if I can, Marcus, can I actually ask a theist in the room, kind of what I asked you? Is that okay? And then kind of get back to this, because I'm kind of curious. We have Oshiwawa in the room, and I'm just kind of curious if he listened to that discussion we just had. If you're talking Ochi, nobody can hear you. Okay, I don't think his thing's working. All right, well, he'll fix that and get back to us. So, Marcus, I'm glad that you actually recognize a lot of the stuff that you've gotten out of it. I really am. I think, again, that's a testament to your wanting to see if your beliefs comport with reality, right?
Yeah, sorry, I was having a bit of technical difficulties there. Goodness. I backed out of the live feed to look at the side chat, and I'm on mobile, so it was giving me a little bit of an issue getting back on here.
No problem. Do you want me to repeat what I said?
So, no. I heard what you said. I kept the feed going, but I was muted, so I couldn't answer.
Oh, now I'm concerned. Now I'm wondering if that person that donated to me was thinking that was going to Christian Hillbilly's lobotomy fund. Now I'm concerned. It's possible, isn't it? No. Why are you guys so quiet? Everybody was like jumping at the chance to get in the last hangout to talk, and now you guys
I wanted quiet. I'm just waiting to find out what the topic is, really.
Oh,
I do want to say, Marcus.
Everyone talk at once.
As in,
it was too quiet. Everyone, look, the molecules of the. You don't need to shut up.
Marcus, welcome from one Calvinist Baptist apostate to another. Your history of childhood, at least, sounds unbelievably familiar. It's the home churches and all that stuff.
Hey, look, I'm the biggest apostate ever. I'm deconverted man. I mean, come on.
So how many
I
people
missed
in
that.
here are young Earth or ex-young Earth creationists? Then I obviously.
Well, that's not me, so I can't be in that club.
Were you Kaiser a young Earth creationist?
No, actually, no. If there was a young Earth creationist type, well, actually, I would have to say, yeah. I think it was very like a non-spoken thing, but there was a lot of this 6,000-year-old thing and everything. But as far as science itself, was almost like non-existent in even the doctrines, to a point to where I didn't even recognize it as a thing. It probably just went straight over my head.
You know that's funny you mentioned that. Did you guys catch the people that actually watched the other hangout? Yeah, really.
I told you I caught part of it.
You caught part of it.
Shit.
Yeah,
Look, I told YouTube to tell me about it, and it didn't. It's not my fault.
YouTube notifications sucks. Okay, let's be realistic here. But there was a part in there where we could see Christian Hillbilly trying to derail the derailment of the derailing thing, and he had brought up that he loves science. And a few people started to jump on it, but I was not going to go down that route because that would have been a whole different video. Okay, just because I was like, oh god, that's.
I've interacted with that hillbilly, and I have nothing good to say about him. And that the sort of person he is irrelevant to whatever argument he has. He doesn't have an argument, so that doesn't leave you much to work with.
No, he's just philosophistry and precept.
Well,
that's all he is.
He started out. I remember this. He started the conversation with like, "Do you think that there's a good and evil?" I'm like, "Well, I don't even know what you mean by that." He's like, "Oh, I'm not talking to you because you don't believe in good and evil." I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, I mean they do these things to selectively engage with whom they want to engage with, right? And I don't know why Jim wanted to engage with me because I can tell you right now he's a simpleton. Right. And I'm not saying that you have to like be a genius to engage with the great Steve McRae, but for God's sake, I mean, if you have the IQ of a turnip, why bother with having conversation with anybody in here? Everybody in here has an IQ of above the turnip level.
The number one thing with Hillbilly that got under my skin and I kept going at him about was when I talked to him 8 years ago was that he is happily ignorant. He celebrates the ignorance. Even his name of Hillbilly is like, look, haha, I'm proud to be this. I'm like, you should never be proud to be ignorant. So he's
dude, that's the worst kind. That's the willful ignorance. That is just the worst.
He loves being ignorant. He relishes it. Like, look at me, I'm a hillbilly. Look,
I'm just a simple country boy.
And it's like,
I don't know what words like monastic mean.
There is nothing to celebrate in that, And yeah, I know there was one guy that made a lot of money on one single joke doing that, but you're not that guy. One, secondly, you have to be kind of simple to make him make money. But anyways,
I'll make sure I don't go through any copyright process. But you wouldn't be heavily referred to. You might be a blank.
You might be, right? Yeah. You might be a blank if you know what a blank. I'm talking about blank.
But see, that's
so you're saying Larry the Cable Guy made no money?
No, I'd say no. He made lots of money because people out there that have that, there's certain audience that will appeal to, and that's the sort of so Hillbilly is that sort of person, but then times some number.
But DM, it takes a comedic genius to pull that off, right? To be that caliber of somebody who pretend to be that country bumfuck, and be funny, right?
I don't know.
Opposed to a comedic idiot.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think Larry Cable Guy is kind of funny. He's not as funny as Jeff Foxworthy, but I'm actually my favorite is Ron White. Now that guy's funny.
Oh god!
Oh, he beats them all to hell. I mean, he it's sad, but he is the funniest out of all of them by far.
Yeah, no, Hillbilly isn't the only something. I suppose that. I guess it's weird that that I suppose the surprise is that he's able to use a computer and the internet. That's.
Unfortunately, if you want to blame anyone for that, you need to blame AOL. Because AOL allowed stupid people to get on the internet.
I never really thought
Are you
about
saying
it.
there should be like a litmus test to pass before you're able to get online?
It was actually
I kind of
Prodigy
have.
for AOL.
I have my personal way of describing. There are three types of people. Three levels of ability on the computers. So you've got level one, third generation, so three generations. So first generation are the people who have skills. They've got degrees. They do IT for a living, things like that. They effectively can program and they understand how the machines work and all that kind of stuff. Then you've got level two users, which are the people who they're able enough to put a computer together. If something goes wrong with it, usually they can find a reason to fix it. And if they don't know how to do it, they know someone who does, who can advise them and help them. And then there's the AOL generation. They know nothing about computers. They plug it in, and they're the kind of person that phones up IT and say, like, my cup holder keeps coming in, and they have to be told that no, that's the disk drive.
No, I think you're right. I mean, AOL was an intranet, right? It was a gateway to allow people to access the internet. It did allow people, anybody to go out and have an opinion, right? There was chat rooms on AOL. I was a member of many of them. And anybody who had a computer in those days could go in and it was a lot more interactive than IRC, because IRC was really
Dude, IRC is for the first. IRC is still fucking awesome. Dude, that was an awesome joke. I have never heard the cup holder CD trade joke. That was hilarious.
I got a friend who used to be in IT. I used to work in a call center, and he told me the story about this person who phoned up and said their computer wasn't working. And so he went through the checklist. Okay, well, is the screen on? And, and it went all the way back. And it's like, is it plugged in? Yes, it's plugged in. Okay, as the fuse box tripped, I'll go and check. And so, he goes and checks.
Cliff, that was Gateway.
And in the end, it's like, well, is there anything else going on? Well, there is a power cut, but the phone's working.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a famous one from Gateway. Gateway computers. The tech told the person to pack the computer back in the box and send it back because they're too dumb to use a computer.
Right.
Well, my first computer was a gateway. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think there are certain people that probably should at least have parental supervision while using a computer.
Oh yeah. Well, my first computer actually was a gateway. When I first, it was when I first started getting into. It was back when the Voodoo 2 card was out, and I actually SLI'd. I wish I kept those cards. If I knew the historic value those things had, I don't know what I did with them.
Yeah,
my first computer was a gateway to a gateway drug. Been addicted to it.
Ochi, are you back, by the way, Ochiwawa? So we can kind of.
Ochiwawa.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. So let's get back on the topic rather than computers, because that.
Yeah.
So as a theist, because I want to get theist as a oppression, right? I want to make it very clear that my goal was not to take down a theist. My goal was to take down an immoral piece of shit. Right? Completely different. Huge difference here, right? So, and by the way, I got to give props to Ocean and to Cliff and to everybody else, Jade and everybody who was involved in that video, because it was just an epic destruction of somebody who follows this fundamental mentality that just has no moral code whatsoever. So I just want to get your impression, Ochiwawa.
To be honest, I missed that part. So
That's okay. You're stuck as a human being. You have no moral compass, and may have God have mercy on your soul.
Which God?
Yeah, pick one.
Sorry, wait a minute. That was my inner Ocean coming out there.
You're the only damn.
Oh God, who snorted?
And I can't even get your opinion. Okay, moving on then. How about we go to the other extreme? We'll get a nihilistic, atheistic, naturalistic point of view. Carrie.
Well, speaking of hillbillies, though, what finally killed off.
On my shit list.
No, I was saying, what finally killed off political hillbilly is when he doxed his oh God, I can't believe I got total brain lag. His what the hell's wrong with me?
You want to talk
his
brief summation?
He docked something.
Oh God!
I know, I'm waiting with
the
great
screen, the
now.
front.
Hey,
what is wrong with me?
I'll just vomit out words until
the main
school, hospital.
as IT as I am. What is? I don't know. I can't. I'm going to be so stupid for this. I gotta add. Well, I can't. What's the main?
Guys, just having
your.
Is it bigger than a bread box?
No, all the icons on your screen. The main. What the hell is wrong with me?
Homepage.
Desktop.
Wait.
There's no name. That's what you're searching
Yeah. Wait.
for.
Oh God. Never mind. I cannot believe. I just.
Password.
I'm never gonna hear the end of this. I swear to God. No, he had shortcuts on to porn sites, and he doxed it on a video. He had porn shortcuts all over his
the tabs on the top there.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, like he had it. You could see his window, and you could see the web browser, and you could see all these tabs for all these different like porn sites.
It was I think one specifically it was Political Hillbilly, and one specifically was like cousin porn. And
I think we're going off topic completely here. So I'm gonna okay, Carrie, back
morality.
To you. I don't know what the hell that 5-minute spasm of Kaiser's was. I mean, I think you might have been having a stroke.
Sorry,
it's okay. And Ocean wants to get in, so if there's a spot, let me know. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to Tony.
Austin.
All right, let me get to Carrie if I can.
Okay.
What do you think of the hangout?
I think the most important part was said almost at the very end, where the question came up about whether or not, if you identify someone who's a sociopath, if you should do anything to steer them away from the religion that seems to keep them under control.
But that was a great question, wasn't it?
That was literally the only thing that mattered there at the end, because
I think that was a damn good question. That was
absolutely right. If he is as psychotic as he appears, none of us should attempt to dissuade him from stopping being a theist.
Yeah, no, I completely in agreement with you. I think on that.
Yeah,
it almost sounds like one of these criminals who are on the run, and if you see them, do not approach them.
Yep.
Yeah, I've always been torn by this. I've heard this I've heard people like Kirk Cameron say, well, if I didn't believe in God, I'd run out and kill all these people and stuff like this. And you don't, and I have to believe that they really believe that, because I don't have any other choice, because they said
I don't believe them for a second, honestly.
But they said it. So
really?
At some level, they believe this. Because they wouldn't. Is it hyperbole? I don't know, but I wonder if it's like some sort of defense mechanism, like, don't you dare try to deconvert me, or I will do this.
No, I think what it is Christian Hillbilly is just not a smart person, right?
But I'm saying in general, like, why people would say that.
And deconverted. I just wanted to. I actually, I've actually been contemplating about this for a little while now, where you don't have to have the deity to have the values. I just.
Yeah, no, of course not. The reason the person might say that is like some sort of mental defense mechanism, like. If you do this, I will do this bad thing. So it's kind of like it's an ad ballium of sorts.
I mean, you might have a point. I mean, I'm not going to discount that, DM. I think you might have a valid point there, but I don't know if that's particularly the case of Hillbilly, only because I've known him so long, right?
Well, yeah. I think with him, I don't know.
But I think the other point of concern is the fact that this guy used to work around children. I'm just mortified by that. Absolutely freaking mortified.
Yeah.
What's that, Cliff?
Bill does according to himself.
Well, I mean, he thinks he's a teacher too, though. I mean, he lives in a delusional world.
The man wore a custom-made Batman cloak to a funeral because it's all he had to wear.
What?
Yeah.
Well,
I know he wears Batman cloaks. So,
No, the Batman shirts, Batman hat, big deal. This was a cape.
Did he talk like this? You are going to have.
No, he doesn't do that Batman. He does the other Batman, the Adam West Batman.
Oh, okay.
Before we got live, by the way, he had been telling us that he just got back from a fair of some kind where they were about to arrest him because he was just being a nuisance. This is his
but that's
mentality.
persecution, Steve. It's persecution porn.
Well, of course, it's persecution. Anytime you tell a mentally ill person like Christian Hillbilly that he's, psychotic, it's persecution to them. They love that persecution porn. They thrive on it, right? Matter of fact, there are people in the community, like Clowncar Posse community, that actually say, "Look, if you're not being persecuted for your beliefs, if you're not
doing something right
all the time, then you're not doing something right." And it's like, wait a minute, that makes no sense. Look, a bad argument. That doesn't
would that be classified or categorized as like a self-fulfilling?
That doesn't make your argument any better. That you're using that as a reason that why you're persecuted. You can't say, "Oh, you're pointing out my shitty argument, ergo my argument's good." What the hell kind of reasoning is that?
Well, it's not.
I think it might be seen as a self-fulfilling prophecy, maybe. I think it might be seen as a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's worse than that because it's a self-inducing, self-prophesizing failure.
Yes. They were told specifically in Scripture that
growing up.
They were told specifically in Scripture that
guys, I don't want to hear a bunch of people talking at once. Let me call on people, because if not, we got a little lag, and it's just Kaiser's interrupting every time because of his lag. So Marcus, go ahead, and I want to hear what you had to say on that, please.
I was told that all the time growing up that if you ain't being persecuted, then you're the child of the devil.
How does that even work? Right?
It's a scripture.
Yeah, well, sure, but I mean, it's logically unsound, is it? Not as rationally unsound, I should say. I mean, you can't use that.
If you were attempting to use it as an argument, then yes, it would be unsound. But
they do.
They're using it as a defensive mechanism. They're not.
But they do use it as an argument. They're like, we must be right because there's all this persecution going our way.
If the question of whether or not they're right or wrong is being presented, then yes, then that's a valid explanation for them.
It's pretty scary, in my opinion, though.
Yeah. Self-justification. It's internally consistent hermeneutics. So it doesn't have to have anything outside the hermeneutic circle to validate it. It is self-sustaining within its own cycle of explanation and explanatory powers, even though none of us would view it as having any sort of explanatory virtue outside the circle. And that's the nature of hermeneutics.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. But we do have actually another theist in here, so I don't know what's going on with Oshi Walber's mic or something. I thought he was going to come back, but the other theist in the room. Yep, you know who I'm talking about. So, by the way, Ocean, I'm not placating to you. You did do a really good job in that discussion. I just wish he hadn't been such a dick and muted you.
He's afraid of me.
Yeah,
Christians. It's a regular thing. Christians or monotheists in general don't fare well against polytheism.
I've seen that. It's a difficult. They're not. I think what it is they're not used to a polytheistic argument. They haven't been exposed to it, right? Could that be the case? I think a lot of these people don't think on their feet, and they just parrot things.
Atheists and monotheists have trouble with it.
Well, but again, neither one of them, I think, have been exposed.
Right, they're not familiar with it, and I think, I also think that it's a better position than either one. I've become convinced of that over the course of.
So is your goal to convert everybody to polytheism?
No.
Oh, but it's a better position, you think?
Yeah, it is. I think it's a better position, but it's.
You should argue for a better position.
Part of the position is that I don't necessarily have to convert anybody.
No, but you still want to argue it's a better position, right? Sure. It's not a direct conversion, but I mean, if it is a better position, don't you hope that people take that as a position? Indirectly, not directly.
I think that it would be nice, probably, but
okay.
Just like, I think that people that really like science would like for people to believe in evolution, but it's not required by evolution to believe it, right? It's kind of a very similar sort of thing. There's nothing in my belief system that says you have to agree with me.
I really wish
science
Tony would have came in here. I would have liked to had you guys kind of talked a bit, but I don't know what happened to Tony. He just kind of vanished.
Yeah, I was interested in talking with Tony a bit. It was
what happened in the other hangout. I mean, you guys were over there. I sent the link a billion times, and I haven't heard from him. He was not on.
He buggered off. I can't remember exactly. I had to go and came back.
Interesting.
Ocean had a question or something that I heard the last bit of that you hadn't gotten an answer from atheists or something to that effect. Do you know what that was, Ocean? Or
Oh yeah,
No,
let's go
I
down that route. Let's do that.
So okay, I've been in several situations with atheists that say they give the quote "extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence" or something like that in reference to God. And I've routinely asked in that situation, well, what kind of evidence are you looking for? And that I've never gotten a satisfactory answer about that, because usually there's an out to whatever evidence would be presented.
So instead of looking at it with probabilities, because absence of evidence is evidence of absence in probability in Bayesian theory. So I get that. But when we're
I don't
talking
even
about,
think you could do it with Bayesian.
well, no, it's in
Again,
this case,
we're
in
looking
probability
at
theory,
what
that's always the case. But put that aside, because I don't want to get into that kind of jargon stuff. But
I
putting
had
that to the side,
with Crockett Duck. He tried to use Bayesian. I thought it was terrible.
it's a good conversation to have, but I'm not going to get into it right now.
Sure.
But you do agree, and I agree with you on this, that if you say there's no evidence for something, you have to have an expectation of what you think that evidence should look like if it was there, correct?
Again, I
said
carry in the.
Sure. I said, if you say there's no evidence for something, I think you kind of have to tell people what you would expect their evidence to be if it was there, should it be the case.
Right.
Then I mean, how are you going to say there's no evidence for something if you don't know what the expectation of evidence is?
Right.
Okay. So I think you and I both agree on
I
that.
remember the example that you gave, by the way, where you were saying that if there was a God that was like all good or something like that, that wanted
the omni-God. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That divine hiddenness would not be able to be demonstrated, which I agreed with. I thought that was a good example.
But that's local atheism, though, and local atheism is basically just seeing if a particular God exists, right? And defining it in certain ways to see if these particular values, like how I find the hardest one, and if anyone wants to try, be my guest. And maybe there is. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I think the aesthetic deity God is something that I haven't really been able to figure out a good argument against. I mean, maybe there is one, but aesthetic deity, right, is a God that basically just created the universe because he thought it was beautiful. Thought just like a painter creating a painting. So a deist God doesn't interact with us. It's not a theistic God, and just this for argument's sake, I don't usually do this.
I think that any God would be theistic,
but because we have you in the room, Ocean, and I wanted to make sure we're on the same page. From here on in this conversation, if we talk about theism, we're going to be referring to classical theism, which is the interactive God.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay,
sure.
Because it's going to get confusing.
You're trying to differentiate theism from deism or polytheism.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So I want to make sure that we're clear on the terms, and if everybody understands that.
I just take a exception to monotheism being the default. So
I get
usually
that.
when I'm having that conversation, I'll say, well, let's not say theist, let's say monotheist.
Right, and that's why because you're in the room and I understand this conversation, I don't want to have any confusion. So just for this, theism is the classical version of theism, meaning that is an interactive monotheistic. Okay, so you okay with that for the conversational purposes?
No, of course not. But we'll continue with you saying with.
Well, I mean, it's not.
I understand what you're saying.
It's just a conversation. I'm not agreeing with that's how you should define it, but it's just easier in this. I mean, I guess we can go the other route. How do you want to? You can go I can use your.
No, you can say classical theism, or you can say monotheism.
Okay,
or philosophical.
Fair enough. So what do you? When I say oh my goodness, I'm full of Kaiser. I'm having a stroke here, people. Aesthetic deity.
Well, I do have a pretty pertinent question for Ocean that really wraps around pretty.
Why would you want to ask another question?
I'm sorry, but I do want to ask him about the.
What's happened here?
I'm sorry.
Afterwards.
Okay, so what is
the answer to that is easy, which is you couldn't remember, and he wanted to fill the vacuum to allow you room to remember where your ass is.
So no, okay, fair enough. So a God that just wanted to create the universe for aesthetics. What's a good argument against that? Who wants to go?
Wait,
Anybody?
what?
An aesthetic deity.
Steve wants to just not have the conversation that I want to have.
Yeah, I wanted to have the conversation that Ocean wanted to have.
I was trying to find a simple.
But I had another question. What do we call the icons on our desktop?
Icons?
Avatars. And actually, what I was going to ask is, right on that, yeah.
All right, so we'll table my thing because I do want to get to it.
Can I answer Ocean's question somewhat directly.
Sure, yeah. Ocean, we'll talk about Ocean, then go to mine. So go ahead, Ocean.
He asked the question about sort of what evidence would you need. Now, I don't know if this happened when it was off in the off-air part or afterwards, but for me, I would just need I would need two personal experiences. The first personal experience would open the door. The other one would make it more reliable. So, just to hypothesize a situation, Jesus appears in my living room and talks to me. Now, I tend to go for naturalistic reasons before supernatural. That's the way I work. So I would have to, okay, I've had an experience. What happened there? Let's go through the checklist. Have I had some bad food that's given me, made me ill and I've had a hallucination? Was I having some kind of mental episode? Did someone put something in my drink? Was it a dream? Etc. So I'd go through all these naturalistic things, and then I would be primed for a second experience, which would confirm the first, repeatability. But here's the question. Would an answer of, I'm not sure, but if that God is omniscient and omnipotent, they know exactly what it would take to convince me. Is that a reasonable question?
I think that's, again, kind of along the lines of what Steve was saying, is that if you have a certain kind of deity, you're going to expect a certain kind of response. But I don't believe in gods that are omniscient or omnipotent.
So the proof would still be dependent on the god, though. How we in agreement about that?
Yeah, but as a polytheist, I'm not interested in the omniscience claim. Like Christians, there's plenty of evidence that you can have for that God, and a lot of the reasons why I'm not a Christian is because of the philosophical problems with it. That I think that omnipotence and omniscience, like the omnis in a god, are incoherent when put together.
Do you think that there's
the problem of evil presents an issue? The Euthyphro dilemma presents an issue, but these issues don't come up with polytheism. So those philosophical objections aren't present there.
But Osha, do you think an omnigod is the way an omnigon is generally defined as? Do you think that is logically internally inconsistent?
Self-defeating. Yeah.
Self-defeating.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's basically what I just said. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think a lot.
Oh shit! I do have a question. I just wanted to know what your what your position was on if a god would, or guys or deity, what's define whatever, would design a universe, make a universe, or how would in their sentient life and how would you expect this creator to actually really interact on the same plane?
Would it be me
as
Cliff Jumper seems keen to interrupt you.
So
how would you expect the creator to actually physically interact with any sentient life in the universe that they created?
I don't know.
That's okay. That's
again. Nobody did answer Ocean's question though. Nobody has given an example of what the expectation.
Well, that's the reason I was asking that is like. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Kaiser, nobody's answered the question yet. So how about we pick somebody to answer this question?
Me. Oh, I got it.
All right, go ahead, Ian. Answer his question. What evidence?
The converted man really wanted to have this conversation.
Yeah. Well, because I have my three criteria that I always have, which is empirical evidence, repeatable test, and/or logic and sound. Valid and sound argument. Almost said logically coherent argument. I got to break my habit, but one of those.
Have a logically coherent argument, but
right. Valid and sound. Yeah, valid and sound. Right. Yeah, valid and sound. I've seen valid, but I haven't found sound yet. So
what would be your standard for sound then? You just
without logical.
Come on, that rabbit hole of what's valid and sound. Deconverted. Just give your evidence, or just give what you think.
No, that's not a rabbit hole, Steve. Stop calling things a rabbit hole that are really.
These aren't rabbit holes. Why do we need to determine which valid and sound? I want to answer. I want somebody to answer.
Oh, it's just definitions, Steve. Just let him do it.
Within logic, soundness is not making a logical fallacy.
Wait, soundness isn't.
What?
Wait, that's valid.
That's valid.
No,
that's valid. Valid means it's logically.
No, valid is structured.
Valid is structured logically. Sound is if the premises are.
Valid is without fallacies. Sound is that it's reflecting reality.
Yeah,
so
that the premises are true.
You want something that's sound, it's begging the question.
Right.
That's what I said. I'm pretty sure that's what I said.
Right. So you are begging the question.
No. I said valid and sound.
Right. So that's begging the question. That's
no. It's not.
You either understand that or you don't.
No, I want a valid and sound argument. That means an argument that is free of logical fallacies. Okay.
If you just want free of logical fallacies, then you're just looking for valid. And there's plenty of those.
Valid and sound. No, it has to be both.
Christians who have provided arguments for.
Yeah, those are not sound. Many are valid because they're structured correctly, but they have numerous logical fallacies. So,
what fallacies?
Depends on which argument.
Again, let me finish a statement, and then you'll be able to respond. So, what fallacy is available in the cosmological argument?
Which one?
Any of them.
Depends which one you're talking about.
Cosmological argument.
I mean, it depends which cosmological argument you want. They have different fallacies, every one of them.
If you see how he interrupts me as I'm answering the question he's asking?
Yes, I do see that, Ocean.
All right. So it's frustrating. So with the cosmological argument, you can go with just the basic cosmological argument of necessity. Right? That either the universe is necessary or it's not. And if it's not, then something that is it's contingent upon something. Therefore, a God is a possible answer for that. That's one argument.
I don't really see the universe as quote unquote like necessary. That's kind of
I mean, I'd have to look at that one, but off the cuff, I would say that there's a potential for a false dichotomy in that one.
Why?
Why? Because you're saying it either is necessary or it's not. How do we know? I don't know. You know, I mean, you're right.
I can't know, but
right. So there'd be a potential for a logical fallacy. I'd have to have it written out and analyze it because I mean, doing it live is not something I do.
I'd say it's.
But one of those three things is what I would require to believe in anything, not just God, but anything at all. I mean, empirical evidence.
Is it necessary for us? Yeah, but is it necessary for really the term necessary isn't really being pinned down.
Necessary means that it has to exist in all possible worlds.
Right. So, is there a possible world in which the universe does not exist? Can you?
Sure. I don't know.
I guess if you're talking about the many worlds theory, I guess there would.
I mean, I'm trying to answer the Ocean's question, and instead I was asked more questions about my answer, so it's kind of weird.
Well, I'm kind of confused with your
follow-ups because you said there was a false dichotomy. I don't think there is one.
All right. Well, that's a separate thing, but
no, it's
so let's suss this out. So
my thing is, look, either there's empirical evidence. If you don't have that, you have a repeatable test. If you don't have that,
right. So why are you looking for empirical evidence regarding a God?
Why wouldn't I? I have it for just about everything else.
Do you have reason to believe that a non-corporeal, non-physical being would present sensory perception as empirical evidence?
I don't have any reason to think that that's a thing in the first place.
That's begging the question.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Sorry.
How is it not begging the question? You're assuming that it's not there when I'm asking you what about your expectations. That's begging the question.
I don't have any expectations. I have to be shown that it's there to talk about it in the first place.
Problem, DM.
It's not a problem.
If you don't have expectation of what the evidence would be, what it would look like, how do you know if it's not there?
No, he said he didn't have expectation of the
I don't have any expectations.
Okay, again,
I have three requirements. It's very simple: empirical evidence, repeatable test, or logically coherent argument. A valid and sound argument is a better way to put that. I've learned as I've done this.
But DM,
those are my three requirements. That's my answer.
Saying valid and sound is begging the question.
Yeah, no, I see.
You're saying valid, and there's plenty of.
No, okay. Well, you have then. What's hypothetical syllogism?
So DM,
let's test whether you know logic or not. What's hypothetical syllogism?
Okay, we're not going to get into
No,
this.
okay then. All right. So
we know the rules of inferences. Anybody can go look up the rules of inferences. Okay, we
he's
understand
not
syllogisms.
saying
we
valid
understand
and sound, which is
constructive
a
arguments.
aspect
We don't need to
of
go down
how
that
logic works.
How about we
is
just
not begging the question? That is silly.
Okay, so
that means to me you do not understand informal logic. That's what that means to me.
You check if an argument is sound. You don't say that you need a sound argument to prove something. That's silly.
Yeah, I'm not.
I didn't say it proved anything because arguments don't work that way.
Okay, so let's go this.
Like,
so
in other words, you don't have any of those three things. That's basically what it boils
let's
down
go down
to.
each one. Do you think?
Do you have empirical evidence for God?
You have to let me finish the sentence, DM. If
that's it.
According to oh my God. According to Ocean's
you have to finish the sentence, and as soon as you started talking, he had something to say.
According to Ocean's question of what your expectation would be for evidence, you say that it's not there. Let me give you an example. Look, if a doctor says, I want to know if you have cancer, he's going to do a test, right? If the test comes back not positive, he can say
what's he using? Empirical
evidence. You're interrupting me again.
Oh.
Jesus Christ, TM, just chill you, okay?
Why is this so hard? I'm answering the question and you're asking me more questions about my answer.
It's so hard for you to let people finish a fucking statement, dude.
Yeah, DM, you're not listening. This is where you put your listening ears on, okay? Listening ears. So a doctor is going to test for something. If he finds it to be not positive, he can say with some confidence that you do not have cancer. Right, the evidence was missing for you to have cancer, but he had an expectation of what would be that the test would be positive if you had cancer. Now, according to your empirical position for sensory perception, you would have to give a reason why you think that a non-corporeal, non-physical God would interact with you in a way that you can sense it. Why is that?
So based on your analogy of the doctor who has empirical evidence and a repeatable test, I'm supposed to then answer this question about a non-empirical, non-testable thing.
We're not talking about testability. We're talking. You said your criteria.
I said empirical evidence, a repeatable test, or a logically coherent argument.
We're going step by step. Your first criteria is
empirical evidence.
Do you know what empirical means? It means by sensory things, right? So it's based on empiricism.
Yeah.
Now, if God existed, what kind of empirical evidence would you expect to see?
I don't know. What you got? What do you got? What do you have? Point to it.
Does anybody else not see a problem here? Am I the only one?
No,
I don't see a problem. No.
When you say the word God, I don't even know what that is. First of all,
wait,
unlike
Dave, just kick him out.
You're gonna sink into agnosticism, DM?
No, I'm trying to answer the question, but you won't let me
answer the damn question.
He is using proper skepticism throughout this entire thing, and you guys aren't getting it.
This is not.
Yeah, let me explain why you're not getting it. Then don't just disagree with me.
Yeah,
if you're starting with a box and you're holding everything in that box is everything you know or everything you could know, and someone comes up to you and says there's something you're missing from that box. You don't have to accept that there's
that. Ocean's not.
Hey, now who's interrupting who? You are saying that there is a God, and you are asking if there's empirical evidence that could prove that God.
That's not.
Now, that precludes the idea that the God you're talking about is in some way empirical.
Okay, so you just straw manned because that's not anything that I said. That's not what Ocean said.
That's exactly why I was trying earlier to say, like, how would a God interact with someone? In the
state the way that God could interact with the universe. That's the evidence.
All right,
that's God dependent.
All right, let me clarify this. I am not giving you what I think would be evidence. I am asking DM what he thinks would be empirical evidence. My position.
Why empirical?
Here, we're doing an internal.
If you're talking about a God that is not empirical, why would you expect empirical evidence?
I am not
talking about a God that is empirical. Then empirical evidence expectation is warranted. Which kind of God are you talking about?
So, we're talking about a non-physical being.
That is irrelevant. If we're talking about the classical God, or are we talking a deistic gods? Have we removed deistic gods completely from the equation?
A deistic or theistic God can be non-physical.
Like any god, honestly, is what I'm.
Yes, but
I'm
it's
willing to
irrelevant
go-
because the designation of deistic to theist is whether or not it interacts with the universe at
If
all.
I'm the person with the question, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Ocean, because I think Carrie's just taking us down another sidetrack.
I feel like there's
another rabbit hole, right?
Yeah, that's what it is, actually.
Yeah.
Go
So,
ahead, Ocean.
as far as what Carrie's asking for, he's asking for kind of what God. I'd say like any immaterial entity with a great mind, with any immaterial mind with great power. So the Christian God goes under that definition. Zeus would go under the definition. Odin goes under that definition. Any of them.
Now, your definition, of course, of great power includes the idea that they are interacting with the world, and that's how the power is measured and quantified.
And for example,
Like, that's
Zeus
the only way to have
lightning
power
bolt
would have any
throwing
sense.
and burning bushes without them burning down, or the sun staying up for 3 days. These kinds of physical type anomalous things.
I feel like me and Carrie were in the middle of clarifying.
Was I right about your definition of power?
No. So I think that we could talk about a creator entity, right?
Well, that's
Something
just deism. That you shouldn't expect anything out of a deistic god. By definition,
I don't know what you're.
I don't even
asking
understand
for
what this expectation comes from. It's so bizarre.
a deistic god, by definition, doesn't interact with the universe, or else he's no longer a deist god. He's now a theist god.
So
In
you have
some
no
way
evidence
interact-
against God, then?
You can't have unless there's some way he interacts with the universe.
Okay, great. I like.
Right.
Okay, this is great. So you're agreeing that there's no evidence against a deistic God.
There can't be, by definition, any
right.
evidence against a
Nor
deistic
would there be any evidence for
or
it. either.
right. It's
Okay.
a completely
So
non-secular
when you're
issue.
asking for evidence, why are
It
you
has
asking
to be
for evidence?
That's
Why
You
I'm-
don't think
okay,
that there's any
there-
possible.
That's exactly my point.
This
That's
is where I get
I-
down to it.
I
is
think okay.
if oh my God,
GM,
if there is any, if you do not believe that there is any way to provide evidence, why the fuck are you bothering asking for evidence?
Thank you. That's
Because
exactly.
there is no evidence for a deistic god. And you are claiming about Zeus and other gods that have all been considered to be theistic. And
Let me know when
in
I
the
can talk.
universe. So you're not
I don't
talking
know what you
about
mean by the difference between theistic and
So
theistic.
that's not my problem. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we
I'm
hit
asking you to define that.
what do you
Deistic
mean
God,
by
by
the difference?
definition, does not interact with the universe.
Hang
He's
on,
only creating of the universe. That's the only thing he did. And from that point forward, has no interaction. Any kind of God claim involves a God that creates the universe. and
Guys,
then
hang on real quick.
continues.
I want to make this is not the real Darth talking, so I'm ejecting him. Okay. All right. So by the way, we might have trolls coming in. So if anybody can come in that's not a troll, take extra spots because we're having. All right. So Immortal's fine. So here's the thing on the table. Ocean has asked you now, DM, if for any god that you think there would be evidence for sensory perception, and now you're just saying that they don't have any sensory perception. So why would you ask for evidence of something that you don't think could give evidence for something? It makes no sense.
Okay. I'm back. I had to take a moment there. Let me reset if I can for a moment. Because I noticed that my emotions were beginning to cloud my ability to interact with people, and so I apologize for that. Interrupting people, etc. It's not good.
Good for taking responsibility for that.
Yeah,
well, I'm not.
That's fine.
I'm not used to, this sort of hangouts yet. I mean, I've only been in a few, and so I'm pretty much a very hermit kind of person. So I think that the question that was attempted to be asked, because I wasn't prepared to answer questions about what my answers was. I just thought I would say, here's my answer and that's it, but I think what the question was, well, what empirical evidence, because that's my first of 3 criteria, am I looking for God? And my honest answer is, well, I don't know what God looks like. But, it's kind of one of those, well, you should, I would think I would know it when I see it, seeing is believing rather than believing is seeing kind of thing that, I mean, it might be a giant head in the sky like Rick and Morty and say, hi, I'm God, and be like, oh, okay, well, now I have something to go on. right? Now I have something where it's weird and it's odd, but at least it's empirical. At least I have something to see. Now, if it's not that, which it might not be, that's fine. Then we go to the next thing, which is the repeatable test. And then it's like, okay, we'll do this, do that, whatever it is. And it, if it can perform these actions that defy physics or as we understand it, etc., it qualifies good enough for me, because there is that question mark of, and this kind of gets into, like, say, Q from Star Trek, where if Q from Star Trek was real, he could be God as far as we're concerned.
Okay,
we would not know that it wasn't God. And because I do not have any marriage to the word God, I'd be like, okay, you want to be called God? Fine, you're God. I don't care. I don't know that I'd be skeptical or not in that position, because I'm not in that reality. So I can only say hypothetically that would probably convince me. I don't know for sure. But at least I'd have, something to go on. I don't have those things to go on.
All right.
So
sorry.
So those are the things. Those are the first two criteria. Then asking for what I've always in my video said, logically coherent argument, but I've re-looked at logic textbooks, and they say valid and sound is what an argument is when it has both the format and is free of fallacies. So I think that's a better way to put it.
Okay, that's right. But let's not talk about the two things first. I don't want to go too far into this.
But anyway, so so far I haven't encountered a God claim that has any of those three things that I require. But everything else that I've encountered has one of those three things, if not all. So for me, in reality, it's like I look around and it's like, here I'm experiencing all these things all the time. And if there's a God that wants, maybe it doesn't want me to know about it, and in that case, well, I'm going to be skeptical of it. But if there's a God for me to discover, then I should be able to discover it in some way that's similar to what I've discovered everything else. And if not, then I have to be skeptical that it exists. Maybe it does. Maybe God existed and blew itself up to make the universe. Why not? I don't know. But where's the argument for that? Then that would lead me to that God possibly.
All right, Deacon Runner, man. Let's just stick with your empirical stuff. You made a statement that you said you would expect there be a great gigantic head in the sky. What God posits that ability to have a big giant head in the sky? So if God X said, I am God and I exist and I will produce myself as a great giant head in the sky, what's the name of that God? Because I don't know.
Steve, I believe that the big giant head in the sky says, show me what you got.
Yeah, he says, show me what you got. Well, I'm just saying as an example. That's not, I don't know that I don't know that that's God. I don't know what God might be, this stuffed lobster on my head for all I know. I don't know. But
then why are you having this discussion if you don't want to?
Well, do you know what God looks like? Because I've never seen it.
God.
I don't know why he's arguing on this.
This is not.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if I said that this was God, right? At least I have empirical evidence of God. Now, I'm not saying that this is God, but I could. Then I have some
empirical
what
evidence
the hell
of the
does
stuffed
a
lobster.
spaceless and timeless and immaterial spirit looks like, right?
Lobsters exist. That's all I've got.
Yeah, the problem is when you water down the word God to something clearly on top of your head that I don't think any rational person would consider a God.
Wait a minute. How are you saying this isn't God?
How do you define God? You gotta redefine God then. What is a God?
I'd be happy to have
I mean, Satan can be considered a God if you think about it.
I was in the middle of a sentence. You cannot redefine a word to this point where it has no meaning any longer.
Justify that statement.
Okay, if I say the word God means my toilet, my ball sack, my computer, it means it really waters it down to have no meaning whatsoever.
That's just repeating what you said, and it doesn't define against cargo calls.
Oh, for fuck's sake, shut up and stop interrupting Steve.
No shit, right? When we were having a conversation, all of us here have been in the Great Debate community for a very long time and on YouTube for a very long time. We know generally what we have as a conversational word, meaning the word God. why sit there for 3 hours and suss that out to the point where it means nothing any longer? At that point, the conversation has grinded to a complete halt and is a waste of fucking time, in my opinion.
No, it hasn't.
Well, you can have those types of discussions, Gary. I find them to be non-productive. I find them to be vague. I find them to be imprecise.
We're telling you to be precise. How is that vague?
I can ask everybody in this room what they think that a valid working definition of God is. If you don't know, go to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. They have some working definitions of the word God. If they're able,
do you not know what a cargo cult is?
If they are able to define God in a way to have a discussion, I think any
talking about
as well. This
do you not know what a cargo cult is? It's the complete rebuttal to everything you're saying.
Skepticism is not productive to a conversation.
Do you not know what a cargo cult is?
What?
Steve, doesn't God have to be a creator of the universe? I mean, Zeus didn't create the universe, so God doesn't have to be a creator of a universe.
Okay, so let me ask other people in here. Richard, can you give me a working definition of God? You're a theist.
Sure. I mean, I just like the philosophical definition that God is a maximally great being, meaning that he possesses, that he is metaphysically necessary, that he's omnipotent, omnipresent, etc.
Okay, I could work with that, right?
I have a different, more simple definition, but
I don't think that's a great.
We can talk about that definition. That might be.
Yeah, no, but
that
it's
was
workable.
That was
I agree.
off the top of my head. That was off the top of my head. But yeah,
it's like as a polytheist.
It would also depend on.
I wouldn't expect you to have the same definition. That's not the point. My question is it workable?
It would also depend on what, like, who you're talking to. Like, if you're talking to a polytheist, then the
phone quake. God has spoken. That was a phone quake. That was nothing more.
I just want to point something out that when someone's references, a giant head in the sky, this isn't the head they're referring to.
Okay, so I would say that a workable God concept has to include the concept of some sort of mind in there.
Okay, I'm okay with that as well. I can work with that. Sure. I mean, if you want to say, look, an omni God is a God that has all the classical conditions of benevolence and omnipotence, and is a mind unto himself, a free agent. I can work with that. I don't need to go and suss it out much further than that. I know what that means. I mean, even a polytheist like Ocean, and I don't mean that derogatory as it sounds, but I think Ocean he won't agree with it, but I think he would go, okay, we can have a discussion about that type of deity. I've had it with him, so I know he can.
I mean, I think that it's an absurd. Well, anyway.
Well,
we can.
Even
about it. Yeah.
Sure.
Even God in the Bible of the Christian Judeo God showed up as fire, so there's some empirical evidence of God right there. So hypothetically, that God could do that again.
But is there an expectation for him to do it? Why is that God obligated to show you fire?
I don't understand where this expectation part, how that plays in. I just have these three requirements of everything that I'm either agree with or don't. It's because I guess what you're asking is why these three requirements then?
No, I'm talking about the first requirement only.
I can explain.
Requirement, not the other.
Steve, there has to be some kind of communication. There has to be some way to be recognized.
Well, that's the question, though, Kaiser. That's why I gave the example. That's why I gave the example with the doctor. The doctor's expectation is that the test is going to come back positive if there's cancer.
Yeah, see, like this model. Does this model make predictions? You want to bring empiricism into this, man. I mean, okay, so you have a good idea of what your model, this God model, entails and what predictions it makes if it's true.
Who are you asking that to?
Deconverted man, I suppose.
Well, he's not positing of a deity, so I don't know.
Well, he did. He
said I don't know.
No, but
it depends on what God he's arguing against.
Yeah,
it has to do with what evidence do you want?
Yeah, okay, that's a better way. Yeah, yeah.
Right,
man, you are the deconverted man. So which God did you deconvert from, and what would be your argument against it?
Christianity.
All right, so what's your argument against that God?
The history didn't line up with anything in the Bible.
Why does that mean it doesn't exist?
Because it's based on lies, so that pretty much was the end of that. I was told it was true. It wasn't true. The end.
Right. So,
and that was the
dependent upon the truthfulness of the Bible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
With me personally, I think the God of the Bible is an incoherent notion.
That too. I mean, there's other reasons as well, but that was the initial deconversion.
I don't know. For me,
but the reason. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
If
I'm gonna bow out.
Say all of the history of the Bible.
Well, no,
that's frustrating.
Hang on, don't bow out. DM, this is.
We just made some advancement, and
you need to stay and listen. I think.
No, I think it's better for me to bow out. Thanks, everyone.
It was up to you, but
I like the lobster, though. By the way.
What are you gonna do, Ocean? I mean, what are you gonna do, right?
I don't know. We just made like a couple inches advancement, and then he.
I thought so. I thought we were getting somewhere, but
yeah.
Well, some people just slowly but surely, right? I get precept upon precept, I guess.
I think there's another thing to consider here, and that is that he could be feeling that he's ready to get upset and say something silly.
No, I get that. No, that's fine.
He's taking himself out of the argument because it's becoming an argument. He's getting frustrating. So
yeah, I don't want to.
I'm getting frustrated too because there's a lot of crosstalk, and it makes it so that it's difficult to present this.
Right.
But what is the guy I was just having the main part of the conversation with, who said he wanted to have the conversation, we just left after there was a little bit of advancement. So I guess it's frustrating for me, but.
Well, I was trying to get it narrowed down, but then I have a skeptic over here that's just derailing it to hyper skepticism, which is just completely a waste of everybody's time.
You're talking about Carrie?
Yeah, I don't want to have I don't want to take a conversation where there's progress.
I don't necessarily mind it,
but it's not the
Carrie's asking good questions. It's just that they might.
Well, I come from a theological background, so I had a hard time believing that philosophy had any relevance to it at all until somebody explained it to me that religion was essentially an offshoot of philosophy. So when I started learning that the things that I had been raised to believe were wrong, I started looking into philosophy to try to figure out, well, how does one determine what truth is then, if truth is not that which God defines as true? So it was a big learning experience for me to realize that people make a lot of assumptions. They don't necessarily even realize they make assumptions, and they do. So it's always beneficial to have some kind of skepticism involved in even just the questions people ask. Because there were certain things that were said on the forums once about questions that people wanted to debate. And I was like, well, why are you jumping so far down the road in debate when there's things you need to suss out and define and make sense of first? It doesn't make any sense to be arguing about God's qualities, whether it makes sense for God to be considered a God having this quality or that quality, if perhaps somebody believes in a completely different God.
Right, but here's the thing. I think what happens is you keep wanting to go back to step one every conversation, and there's just no progress.
No, I don't. I think that the objection he just brought up is
we already established.
All right, well, hang on, Osha. Do you want to run your argument with Carrie then instead of DM?
Yes, that's what I've been wanting to do for some time.
That's fine. Absolutely. Go ahead.
So when he's saying that people believe in different kinds of gods, it's true. There's a lot of people that do believe in different kinds of gods. I think that you can make that statement specifically about the Christian God because it has a lot of specifics that you've got to deal with and suss out. But I think that the vast majority of God beliefs can be boiled down to disembodied mind with great power. That's like the immaterial entity, so to speak. So that's the Christian God fits under that definition. Odin fits under that definition. Zeus fits under that definition. The Chinese pantheon, the Egyptian pantheon, they all have gods that fit under this definition, and with very few exceptions.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
So we can.
There's one thing about those gods that are different. Though. I'm sorry.
My fuck. I think that we can operate with that definition and move forward. Do you agree?
Sure.
Okay. So at that point, what's your next step at that point? Now that we've got a working definition, because that was your main objection, is that you needed.
It would be to verify my understanding of your definition is the same, that we hold the same one essentially. And you mentioned power, God being defined as a disembodied mind with power, and that power from a theological background is specifically related to his interactions with man. his displays of power, his described in Isaiah, his dynamic power, his miracles, his prophecies. There are specific ways that power is made manifest. So if we are talking about that specific kind of God, and those are the sorts of actions and behaviors that he has done in the past or by record, then those things are reasonable to expect him to do as some kind of form of evidence.
Okay. And usually with like how gods communicate with humans, as far as the gods that have religions surrounding them, is through spiritual personal experience.
No.
Okay.
No. We're
why
talking.
no? Are
We're
you
talking
disagreeing with me? Or are
burning.
you saying that that's
Yes.
not?
Yeah, I'm completely disagreeing with you.
Sure.
The God of the Bible is described as one-to-one conversations, many people on many occasions, active signs in the earth. He's appeared to multitudes. He's created prophecies that then were confirmed by many people. These are things that are not disembodied actions. These are actions that someone can see for themselves. They don't have to hear it as a hand-me-down account from somebody else. There are numerous accounts of his interaction with mankind on a personal one-to-one level.
You're saying that there aren't accounts of personal one-to-one levels?
There are.
Okay, so there are.
The record of the God of the Bible is that he is willing to interact with people on a personal one-to-one level in like the real world. He even had a wrestling match with who was it, Jacob? There are numerous examples of the Bible for someone who's read the Bible to believe and expect that he would do such a thing again.
Right. Well, we just I was trying to get away from talking about the Christian God specifically and talking about gods generally.
But now you've changed the nature of these gods, are you not? Because we were specifically said that this God has power. And I agreed that he has power, but it has power because of the definition of what we understand power to be. I mean, if you're just going to say he's a guy with power, but then not explain what that power entails or what it's capable of doing, it becomes inert. It has no value. It has no substance.
What I was saying earlier is that we usually have gods that will interact with people on the basis of personal spiritual experiences.
What do you mean
and
on personal
at that point you
spiritual?
disagreed for whatever reason. I don't.
Yeah, well, define personal spiritual, because the second you say spiritual, that strikes me as like being non-corporeal in nature, which is the exact opposite of what I was talking about.
Okay, are you saying that doesn't happen, or that are you saying that happens and these other things with wrestling?
Well, in relation to the explanation of what power means, anything that's like divine revelation, information being beamed directly into your mind would not qualify. Because you're just describing something akin to telepathy.
It does not require any kind of power to do that.
It could be technology that could pull that off.
And that's not power.
No, I wouldn't define God as being a technomancer, no.
Okay, I'm confused now, because now you're saying that technology has nothing to do with power.
No, I'm saying that technology has nothing to do with the power you defined as part of God.
I think that there's a major crosstalk happening.
Ocean, you're confusing divinity with technology, like pretty obviously. It's pretty straightforward, obvious. You're confusing.
I think that there's, if you have, all right, let's say that you have some sort of great technology, you can certainly provide the illusion that there's something with great power.
Correct.
Right. So
now you're going down the road that I was trying to say before about how do you define God. And that's now you're completely
but that would not be
flaking apart the whole.
An alien would not be a disembodied mind.
Why by definition would someone with great technology not also be a disembodied mind? Where's the defeater for that?
I think once you become a disembodied mind with great power, that fits the definition of a god. So it wouldn't be
a god, but we're not talking about a god anymore. We are specifically talking about the God that was defined in the Bible. So we're not.
I haven't been talking about that this entire
paths here at all. He has to remain consistent with the character described in the Bible, or we're talking about some other god.
Right. That's what I'm doing. I'm talking about some other god.
Okay.
I'm talking about any god. I'm not defending the Christian claim at all.
Okay.
I have not been.
Yeah, but if you're talking about a general, if you're talking generally, that has to be included. That's all. You see what I'm saying?
What?
Yeah, some sort of disembodied mind with power, whatever.
See, the reason I was able to accept your definition of a disembodied mind with power was because we were then able to use the reference frame, the bounded nested frame of the Bible, as explaining what that power means, how it's defined, how it manifested itself historically, that sort of thing. So the second you then decide that you don't want to talk about that God, you want to talk about some other God, you now need to provide a frame of reference for how you justify the idea of power. Like, what does that mean? How does it influence the world or
I'm
affect
fine
it in
with
any
saying
way?
that it's like, sure, that power in this instance is kind of a weasel word. Because, there's no standard for which you can say, well, this is the reason why a god might have power. If we wanted to talk about Frigg, for example, Frigg is a goddess of rain. So if you pray for rain and then it comes, Frigg has answered your prayer.
Exactly.
So that would be, you might be able to say that that's one example. But then praying for rain and then not receiving rain does not necessarily mean that Frigg does not exist. It just means that she did not behave favorably to your prayer, right?
Is there anything similar to the history of Frigg where in the Bible it states that if two people pray for something, that which you ask will be given to you?
No.
If that was part of Frigg's theology, where she said, yes, if you pray and ask for rain, I will make it rain, then yes, the lack of rain after a prayer would be proof she doesn't exist.
Sure. But as far as I know, that's not part of the claim around Frigg.
Okay.
So, if somebody prays for rain, prays to Frigg for rain, and then rain comes and saves their crop, is that person justified in then believing in Frigg?
I have a question though. Does the notion of spacelessness and timelessness apply to most gods?
I completely, he dropped out. I didn't catch what he said.
That as soon as I ask a question, you want to ask a different question. I don't know why you did that.
People in the live chat real quick are asking Ocean, and I'm not understanding why they're saying this. They say that a disembodied mind is nonsensical. I find nothing nonsensical about it. It's a perfectly understandable concept, even though we may not know how it would be possible, or if it even is possible.
I think it's a nonsensical concept to somebody who's a naturalist or a materialist.
Well, no, I don't think so. But it's not. No, let's clarify our terms here. A naturalist wouldn't.
No, if they're a materialist, it would be nonsensical. Absolutely. Saying that something is immaterial to a materialist is going to get them really confused.
Okay, fair enough. For a materialist that doesn't accept what. Okay, yeah, in that particular case, I'll concede that. But most people, the concept itself is not incoherent. It's not internally inconsistent. There's a state of affairs.
No, it's not internally consistent.
Yeah,
it just doesn't comport with reality in any way.
It may not. Yeah, that's fine. It may not comport with reality, but I'm not using sense of whether something's nonsensical or not. If it comports reality, I'm using nonsensical. Is it something that we can conceive of?
If you're going to make a statement like that, I'd want to know how you would be able to demonstrate that a disembodied mind could not exist. That's more interesting to me.
Yeah,
because when you say that it doesn't comport with reality.
Well, that we've seen so far. How about
seems to be suggesting that it's then an impossibility.
No. Okay, fair. That's a fair critique. How about I reformulate that? It doesn't comport with reality as far as we have seen thus far.
Why are you amending?
Can I throw something out here? Because it sounds like it was a quick shift to the burden of proof there. Prove that it doesn't exist. How can you prove a disembodied mind doesn't exist?
He made the statement that it doesn't comport with reality. Therefore, he's the one that's made a claim there.
That is a claim. Yeah, I agree.
I'm not comporting with reality. I mean, it doesn't exist. He's just saying that he can't imagine.
Is he saying that it's? That's why I'm asking him to clarify. And everybody seems to want to clarify his statement except for him.
Well, I wanted to clarify my statement because I also said the same thing. That's why I like clarifying my statement, Ocean.
By the definition of naturalism that everybody gave you, that is correct. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that a naturalist would not accept a disembodied mind?
Right.
Okay,
no.
That's fair. Oh, well, then we have some... Are you a naturalist?
No, I meant that I would not accept the existence
of
a
sure, you wouldn't accept it, but that doesn't mean it can't exist. You're just assuming naturalism and saying, according to naturalism, it can't exist, but that doesn't really mean that it can't exist. That means, according to what your naturalism is, it couldn't exist.
I'll ask you a question.
Couldn't exist
I'll
either.
ask you a question. Okay, a disembodied mind. Is that another way of saying mind that has no parts?
I would say that it's mind that has no physical substrate, right? It has no brain.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And no parts whatsoever? Or
it's non-material.
I don't know if it has to have parts. I mean, if you consider the whole part, I mean, the mind could be one complete unit without individuality or what's called atomism, right?
Yeah, like the reason I'm
Some people
asking
believe
this is
this about
because I'm
humans.
thinking back to Thomas Aquinas and Avicenna, who said that God was a thing that lacked any parts.
Right, I'm familiar with that as well, and that would probably mean that's one. You know, as I say, it doesn't. You can't break it down any further, right? You can't break it down into individual parts. We can break down a brain into parts consisting of neurons and cells, and then atoms. And I think what Aquinas is saying is that you can't break down God's mind to that degree, right?
So it doesn't. It's not even one part, and that's the whole thing.
Well, that's what I said. The whole would be
okay.
The whole would be the entirety.
I mean, even even Christian, the Christian God has been referred to as having a back, a nose, hands. Carrie, what else? What other parts?
Well,
he has a butt, according to the Bible.
It's been called. It's also been said that God has wings and that God is the Lamb of God, and I'm pretty sure you don't take that literally, do you?
Well, the ones that I was talking about, they were meant to be taken literally in the Bible. The back, the nose, hands, those were meant to be taken. If you read the scripture, they were meant to be taken literally.
Hang on one second. Hang on. Ocean thinks I'm roadblocking here. So Ocean,
the context of those scriptures.
Ocean, go ahead. And you think I'm roadblocking. I don't see how, but I'm trying to suss this out. But if you think that I'm roadblocking,
I think that me and Carrie could probably advance the conversation on our own, but it's instead.
Well, yeah, but snooze every out. But go ahead. I mean, this is not going
pushing
anywhere.
it into directions that neither one of us are really interested in talking about, which is the reason why other people are talking that aren't me and Carrie.
Well, go ahead.
Carrie, do you agree with that? Is that's kind of happening?
Kinda. It's difficult to stay on point. Put it that way.
Right, and I think that I'm interested in staying on point. And you're interested in staying on point.
I don't know if everybody else is interested in those two having that conversation.
Right,
but it
depends. If everybody else wants
I'm okay with it. Not everybody else. I find it. I think they're just mental debating each other, but I'm willing to listen to it. But that's
I think that Carrie would be a good opponent for this conversation. We need to be able to suss it out a little bit, because there's a few definitions that we're kind of agreeing on, and that there's some objections that he has, but we haven't had really the time to be able to explore those objections.
Does everybody else care?
The side chat, the live chat is blowing up with questions for me.
Yeah, I know. I got that as well. But it's hard to ask you those questions if you want to have a conversation with Carrie. I'm trying to ask you those questions.
No, I think that Carrie would ask a lot of those questions. That's the thing.
I'm not looking at the side chat at all, so I have no idea.
So
some of them are asking about measuring power, whether or not I can demonstrate a disembodied mind. Like a lot of these things, they're good questions that I feel like Carrie would get to. Did you agree with that?
I think we kind of were there, actually.
Right, that's exactly. We were like at the door. So
all right. So live chat. Do you guys want to have just Carrie and Ocean talking for the next 20 minutes or so? I'm fine with that.
I don't think we need 20 minutes.
Okay, whatever. Well, let's go on the
I think that we can suss it out fairly quickly.
Okay, so I want to ask the live chat, because I mean they're asking you a lot of questions, and that's what I'm trying to ask you these questions, Ocean. They think you're getting a pass here because you're a polytheist.
Right, a lot of them do, and that's not what I want.
Okay, so I'm not but you said that I was stonewalling or whatever, and I'm just trying to ask the questions that the live chat is asking me. That's all. I'm not trying to interfere with your conversation with Carrie.
I have one like all caps yes, but
okay. that's Tyler. Okay. All right, so
Tyler, I love Tyler.
I love Tyler.
Always
Tyler's one of my favorite people. We have a weird relationship with each other. But I love Tyler.
Sexual?
No, well, okay, well, can I take the fifth? I'm not actually saying no, but I'm actually saying yes. I'm agnostic on it.
Fair enough. All right. So I was having.
Oh my God.
We were talking about road blocking, and here we are. So anyway, Carrie, where were we at? We were
no longer trying to deal with the God of the Bible in the definition of power. You were going with, I believe it was somewhat of your definition of what a God of power would be.
Right. I think that there's many different ways in which gods express power throughout different polytheistic faiths.
Okay.
And I think monotheistic faiths are usually very similar, that they're the god of morality as well as a creator god.
Materially. They manifest the power materially.
Right, they do.
Right.
And there are cases within polytheistic traditions that they do manifest materially. Odin, for example, does kill someone in a battle at one point. He assassinates a king. And there's other stories regarding Odin, which he becomes material at some point. Like he's able to become material, but that's not his like default state, so to speak. He's going across different realms. There may be some kind of body, but it wouldn't be material.
You have an advantage with Odin, though, because Odin was one of those gods in that entire pantheon. The gods interacted with people regularly. That it wasn't even something like they existed on Mount Olympus and in Valhalla. They interacted frequently. Same with the Greek gods and the Roman gods. They were full of stories of them not being subject to any form of divine hiddenness. They interacted constantly, and so by definition,
having read the sagas, I might disagree with that.
Expect that they interact with them, as proof of their existence. It wouldn't be illogical for anyone to think that.
That what?
If they are used to these gods interacting with people, and you come across someone who's never heard of Odin or never heard of Zeus, but they hear the stories about how Odin and Zeus interact with people, they are completely justified in expecting that they would be able to come across some sort of material evidence of such a god.
How many human hybrids did these stories entail?
Lots and lots.
There's a few. Ragnar Lothbrok is claimed to be the son of Odin, for example.
Yeah.
And there's a story that suggests that humanity is related to Heimdall. So, like humanity generally is related to Heimdall. But it would be after humanity already existed.
As in we're all descended from him?
Kind of like we're considered children of Prometheus.
In different lines, but yes. Say what?
It's kind of like how in Greek mythology or Roman mythology we're considered children of Prometheus because he helped us become more than we were. Heimdall,
that's symbolic. In the story with Heimdall, he actually sleeps with 3 different people.
Oh, okay.
So it's. But I don't know if I don't think I necessarily believe that.
I think the Fafnir was my favorite.
Something like that. But I don't necessarily believe that. I think that the stories are sort of stories. One of the Norse sagas, for example, includes Fafnir the dragon. I don't think Fafnir existed either.
You said they're sort of stories?
They're just, I think they're lessons.
To what extent do you consider any of it an actual fact of reality? Any of it?
I think that they're messages from the entities in question.
Okay.
And lessons, for example. So, like the Havmal is pretty straightforward. It's advice. It's the words of Odin as advice on how to live.
Does it have like testable claims? Like you should do this so that you don't get sick, or you should plant your crops and cycle them through different parts of the year so that the crops don't fail.
No, it does say that you'll benefit from not having conversations with idiots.
Well,
I think that's a testable. That's a testable claim right there, because having conversation, like I just had a conversation with Christian Hillbilly. I don't feel like I benefited from it.
What other practical advice?
I mean, there's a ton of little things. I can pop it up right now. It has advice on like how to treat guests, for example, that you should, if someone is traveling and they knock at your door, you should let them in.
Is any of it
Ocean, you almost have me converted, man. You're close to getting me converted.
Yeah, it's like it also, one of the other pieces of advice is that when you see something objectionable, you should call it out and not let them know any peace. There's other kind of interesting things in there. It's a book of like 120 something.
These are very similar to the teachings of Buddha and Taoism and Confucius. So is there anything unique for your God?
I don't think that the teachings of Confucius are mutually exclusive to the words of Odin.
Well,
I don't think
neither do I. I think most religions have adopted from each other throughout time. But I'm just curious about your specific theology, if we were to try to find out if there was anything special about your God, so that we could have a frame of reference to even talk about it. For example, if you were to
I'm a
then
general
come to me,
apologist, so if Anubis exists, that's not a problem for me. Even the Christian God can exist as long as it's not exactly as described. So the Christian God is described as being omnipotent and all-powerful and omniscient and so on and such as. It's if it exists and it's the only God, then obviously polytheism is incorrect. But if polytheism exists and the Christian God exists as a more limited form, like that it's a desert god of egoism and lies, for example, then sure, it's entirely possible that that entity exists. It just has an inflated ego and tells people everything that's incorrect.
Ocean, can I just ask just a clarifying question? When it comes to polytheism, even the Bible does speak about other gods and other deities.
Right. It talks about Mammon and Baal and a few others.
Yeah. So what I'm asking is that in the version of polytheism that you're putting forth, are we talking exclusively about a group of equally powerful beings, or is there like a supreme being and other beings that are kind of, are there levels?
There's differences in polytheism. There's some polytheists that believe in a foundation of being God called Aletheia, but I don't think that necessarily has to exist.
So are we subscribing to like a multitude of beings that have all equal strengths and powers?
No, I don't think they would have equal strength and power. If they have equal strength and power, then they're all the same God. So I think that Freyja would be distinctly different than Odin. So
do any of them, according to your theology, deal with humanity on a repeatable basis?
Like something that's demonstrable? I don't think so.
Well, literally anything repeatable.
Like here's the thing: is that
how can we know they're real?
That I was asking earlier is when we talk about these gods, right?
Yeah.
So we're asking about evidence regarding these gods. If we're talking about a disembodied mind that occasionally shows up in a material fashion and then poofs itself, there's not very many. There's nothing you can really take and repeat in order to say this is the evidence for God, unless you somehow capture Odin appearing. But then you have like the Bigfoot conundrum, which is like, have this video footage of Odin, what do? Or with ghosts, for example.
It may take a long time for several occurrences to be recorded in enough, enough time, enough validity, enough accuracy for there to be an instance that occurs where someone gets the idea in their head about this God, and then another instance occurs later on where someone can confirm it, and then it can be known that there's this sort of cycle to what's being experienced.
Well, I think that's
becomes repeatability just over a very long period of time.
Right. I think that's largely what happens when it comes to like those personal spiritual experiences, and the reason why we still have these religions today. So it's the reason why I'm a heathen. So, and heathenry is a growing group. Like the group that I'm a part of, for example, we started with around 20 or so people last year. Now we have over 100, and it's getting bigger.
Ocean, I gotta disagree. I gotta disagree with you there for a minute, because I think that the reason that theism is built so strongly and so firmly, across time, is because you got to think. I think if you think about what a group, a demographic would be before that theism came around, where you just had this group, where you had this, maybe you had a group of irrational that was really rational, and when you introduce a rational thing relative to theism, relative, something that's irrational relative to theism. The very fact that you have this group, this thing that can actually make a grouping of people, very tight knit, is pretty powerful. I think the whole
so the social implications of it being stronger than the actual experiences.
Yeah,
which I agree with to an extent. I think that's one of the reasons why our civilizations remain Christian for so long, is because there's a fitting end that takes place when you have a majority religion. But in the case of heathenry, we have, I don't know what you're doing, Kaiser Cube, with your mic, but stop it.
That's why I keep muting, because it's too sensitive. Yeah.
Right. So in the case of heathenry, you have a ton now of first generation heathens that are all converting to this religion because of personal experiences. So to me, that is it's an evidence by group to me, and because it's something that an experience that I've had and an experience that these other people confirm, and we all believe it together. So that's, to me, that stands as evidence, and that's the kind of evidence that Cliffjumper was saying that he was interested in seeing, and I'm willing to recognize that kind of evidence. There's a lot of atheists that just see it as, well, this is just it seems like it's a consistent hallucination or something like that.
But Ocean, isn't
Well,
that...
I mean, I see more of it.
Just
I'm sorry, go ahead.
sentence. Isn't that part of the point of the equivocation of the word evidence when they're looking for an empirical type of evidence?
Right, they're looking for
You're
something
using it as a different type of word, because there's different ways to construe the word evidence, especially in a scientific context, which is basically anything that changes the position, the probability of a hypothesis being true, right? But we're not using evidence colloquially in that regard, I don't think. When I say there's evidence, there could be any evidence you want to evaluate. That's how I'm using it. Is that how you're using it?
I'm not using it as empirical.
Right,
I think that that's the reason why I was saying that Odin as a being that manifests physically at times, but that is not his standard state, is to say that, so that you're looking for an entity like that, you would need to be able to capture it somehow. And
just interact with it.
Some sort of repeatable. Well, no, you need something repeatable. Interacting with it isn't enough.
But I would
the first time is interaction.
Convince somebody that is looking for empirical, testable, repeatable evidence, you've got to fit this agent into a lab somehow. And I don't think that you're going to have that agent be willing to be contained in such a lab.
Hey, Ocean, I have a question. Do you think that arguments are evidence?
Yes. So
I agree.
Yeah, I think that there's plenty of philosophical arguments that work for polytheism. Many of them have been designed by monotheists, but I think that they work for polytheism quite well.
Ocean, can I ask you why do you think the arguments against, let's say, monotheism are not as effective against polytheism? Because I'm not really seeing, and this may be because of my own stupidity, but I'm not really seeing the difference. Because what you're just kind of proposing is just like,
let's take an example.
Like this kind of, this could happen, but I can say it's random chance. You're kind of calling it a deity, and I'm not really understanding the difference.
No, okay. So if you're talking about arguments against monotheism, for example, one argument against monotheism is the problem of evil, right? The problem of evil doesn't work against polytheism. There's no reason why the problem of evil is a problem. It just doesn't. It's not an objection to the claim.
Right. Nor would it work against a not all good God.
Right. Yeah, you could still have a monotheistic God that problem of evil doesn't work for. It's just a God that tolerates evil. It doesn't work. It works on the Christian God.
I can see where you're going with that. I'll have to look into that a little more, but I can see where you're going with that.
There's plenty of other objections to monotheism that I'm sure people could put forward in here. But I have yet to see one that actually works against polytheism. I'm looking for one, honestly.
Also, and if you think about it, with monotheism, and particularly Christianity, where the evil isn't on any kind of level playing field, like for instance, Zeus and Hades. It's not really a level. It's like Satan isn't really considered a god, But I can see it that way too, as being a problem with monotheism.
The difference, it seems, with monotheism, instead, let's say if we're comparing to something like Christianity kind of has a well-defined God, and this God has well-defined attributes, and one of those attributes being goodness, and he's all good. So the problem of evil works well, I think, against that particular God, versus other gods, as we've just acknowledged. But then, my issue is more toward existence. Like, if you're positing any God, and if you're saying that this particular deity exists, then it seems like that's where that's part one that we'd have to get over before we start getting into the finer details. And I'm not really seeing an argument for the existence of this being that is more convincing than the existence of any monotheistic God. It seems like the rationale,
Are you saying there's no argument for the existence? Are you saying that there's no argument for the existence of Odin that's stronger than the existence of Yahweh?
I'm asking for an argument that it seems like you're positing that there's a stronger.
I think it's definitely
of a polytheistic.
Sure.
framework than it is from a monolith. So I'm trying to ask you, what is that argument?
People have experiences of gods. There's plenty of people that have spiritual experiences that are not, they're not mentally ill, or etc. They're not on drugs. People that are otherwise rationally minded people have spiritual experiences or describe spiritual experiences. These descriptions are multifarious. There's different descriptions that they provide. That leads to me to think that the default in examining that would be that there are multiple gods. So
I
you would need to then argue
how do you get to the conclusion, though. I
if
mean,
you're
yes,
gonna
I agree
say-
they do have experiences. Sure.
Okay, there's plenty of people that have experiences. They describe different entities. So unless you're going to give a good reason to say that we dismiss this description, we dismiss this description, and say that their experience is something other than what is described, as many Christians will say about these, they're actually experiencing a demon, or they're actually experiencing the Christian God, except with a different sort of lens. If you're going to say that they're experiencing something else, you need a good reason to say that they're experiencing something else, other than to beg the question by saying that there's only one God.
Okay,
So,
I understand what you're saying on that. I mean, but
let me finish the statement. It's
okay.
one more little bit. So that because you have all these different people that are otherwise rationally minded people describing spiritual experiences that are different entities, it then makes sense to suggest that there are multiple gods. Now, then we get into which gods and so on. But from there, I can say that the default position with those facts would be polytheism, unless you find a reason to dismiss the experiences.
Okay. I'm not saying that your argumentation isn't bad, but how do you make that leap from having a experience, right? Because I know what you're talking about for supernatural experiences. I am not an ontological naturalist for that very reason, and I've always said one of the reasons why I have this inability to determine between theism and atheism is because of personal subjective experiences, right? And I think that people do need to evaluate that. Unfortunately, they're not able to be crossed over to explain it to somebody else very well why you hold a particular position. I get that. There's an epistemic limit there. But how do you get from that? You have something that you cannot explain naturally, if you want to go that route, to gods.
Well, they're experiencing something that they're describing as a god.
Does the entity say it's a god?
Yeah, that doesn't make it true, and that doesn't make it convincing.
No, it doesn't.
No, I don't think that's what Arson's arguing. But how do you know it's? I mean, is there God saying that I am a god? I mean, is that the type of experiences they're seeing?
Usually, what's described is that they're experiencing a presence or a communication. Like Christians will experience this with prayer, for example, when they're praying. Sometimes some Christians describe that there's a spiritual back and forth that is taking place that they feel, and it's not with any, like, they're not feeling it in a way that's physical. They're feeling it in a way that they recognize, but they also can't explain as material. This is something Christians upon Christians have described this. Pagans describe this as well, that when they're in a state of prayer, there is some sort of what they describe as a spiritual communication taking place. It would
be the Holy Spirit type. Yeah,
that's the
or that there's a presence of some kind.
I got you. That's the linking mechanism. Then, so if they're involved in some kind of prayer activity or something to a specific deity, and they experience something, whether that experience be an actual experience or not, I mean, I think they do experience something. That they're
right. You can question whether or not it's real, but like to me. What I said earlier was, unless you have a reason to say that it is something other than described, it should be accepted.
No, I get.
Hold on. That makes a little less sense, because if someone says that they were abducted by aliens, there are groups of people, or even a couple of hundreds of thousands of people that we can speak to right now. And if I were to use that line of reasoning, I would say that it's more likely they would be abducted by aliens. I'm not following that line.
I think the line of reasoning is: are they justified for whatever reason to think that they experienced something with aliens? Right? I mean, I have lucid dreaming. You guys have had lucid dreaming, right? It's just some people that don't know what a lucid dream is. They can interpret that as an alien thing. Now, I think that's not proper justification for the fact that we understand what lucid dreaming now is, right? But people that lived 1,000 years ago, if they would have some kind of lucid dream, they would be justified to think that was a supernatural experience back then.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
well, Steve, I do agree with you. If you're talking about the individual being justified in
Can I
having
address the aliens
based on their experiences, yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
But he's trying. It seems like we're trying to make an objective.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah,
Make an objective truth through these subjective means, and that's impossible to really do, because even if you have these experiences, that doesn't work for me. And I'm trying to understand how this seems to be very God of the gap-ish. In other words,
I don't think Ocean is making an objective argument or even attempting. I don't think he's attempting to make an objective argument here. I think that's been pretty clear.
No, you're correct. I'm not making an argument. This is objective in any sense. I'm saying this is that from the when all you have is descriptions of personal experiences, the default in that situation would be that polytheism is the conclusion, and you can, if you need reasons to get to dismiss those and go somewhere else, I think. So,
but again,
if you have with aliens, let's talk about with aliens in a second. If you have a group of people that have all experienced aliens, all right, and that their descriptions are fairly consistent, their descriptions are coherent within one another, and they're all saying that they're being adopted by aliens or abducted by aliens, then the default would be, unless you have a good reason to dismiss them, that they're mentally ill, that they're common, that they have a history of hallucinations, or
they've been abducted by aliens.
Then that means that, yeah, the default in that position would be that they've been abducted by aliens, unless you have a good reason to suggest otherwise. So with, do we have a long history of people describing being abducted by aliens?
Yes.
Right. So how long does that go? Does that go
decades?
It goes decades.
Millennia.
How long does God's go?
And extremely consistent stories too. These aren't stories that are walled off. The
wait, Ocean. Wait, so Ocean. I see where you're going now. I see where you're going with this. Yeah.
At that point, is it plausible to suspect that these people have been abducted by aliens?
Yes, it is plausible.
Okay, right. So it's a possible. It's rational to hold that position. Correct.
Well, actually, I look at this way. I look
without anything else. All right.
Oh no! Without anything else, I would say it's rational for them who experienced it. For me, I would say it's not rational for me. That's why most people
all
don't
the
believe
information, all the information you have is descriptions regarding the experiences. The descriptions are coherent within one another, and you have a bunch of them and a history of it. Is it rational to hold the position that they might be correct?
I think the first question you have to ask yourself, though, when evaluating these kinds of claims, is do you believe that this person did experience something or not? And I'm more willing to give credence to somebody that I trust, like MP. I don't think MP is a dishonest person, right? And if MP and I were going out having a drink and stuff like that, and hanging out and stuff like that, and he was relating to me an experience he had, I would not say to myself, okay, yeah, he's just bullshitting. He never had the experience. I would give him the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm more likely to believe somebody. Yeah. So we have to first say, okay, did this person experience something? And then go, okay, let's try to figure out maybe what that experience was, right? Is that not a decent way to approach those kind of situations?
No,
because some people, they tell me they have an experience, I just think they're an idiot, right? I mean, if you think Christian Hillbilly tells me that he saw Jesus, I'm going to believe him.
But Steve, I think even in this discussion, I'm granting that they've had these experiences, and I think that's what Ocean.
Right, I want to make sure
that like we're granting that.
Look, MP, I don't want to say it was aliens, but it was aliens.
I'm sorry, MP. I thought you stopped. I didn't mean to cut you off.
because
aliens.
We have all these different. We have the Bigfoot claims. We have thousands of. There's even shows about Bigfoot now. We have the Loch Ness monster, which thousands of people have even seen. So we do have these consistent accounts from various people that we don't trust, because we understand that sometimes you have things like groupthink and witness tampering, where one witness is speaking and the other witnesses kind of all get their stories kind of together, even though they don't really want to do it. That's why eyewitness testimony sometimes is invalid. So I'm just trying to understand how are we going from the inference that these people have had an experience to whatever their conclusion about that experience is also true, because it may not be.
Yeah, but as a prosecutor, that's one of the first things you have to do. You have to tell if the story is credible or not, and you may agree that the person didn't experience it the way they thought they did, but you try to evaluate if he's trying to tell you something true to the best of their ability, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, because there's a difference there. I mean, I think people with testimonial evidence get shit wrong all the time, but that doesn't make them a dishonest person if they have to have a faulty recall.
True.
No, and I can't sit here and say that polytheism is false or there are no gods at all. But the reason why I'm skeptical of the claim is because if you're trying to, if the argument is that these people have had experiences and they can't tell us, and they've given us this conclusion that it must be this, and until we can
I'm not saying
that, we kind of have to accept that. I'm just not, that's just not the way I think we generally accept.
What about the Occam's razor objection that monotheism is simpler than polytheism, and by extension, atheism simpler than either of them?
I think that a coherent position is more simple than an incoherent position.
Yeah, I think Ocean would definitely disagree with that.
Yeah, I think that
nice one, Ocean.
Polytheism monotheism does not. That's
I like to meet alien.
So, yeah, polytheism definitely wins the Occam's razor argument because we're dealing with a god in monotheism that is way more complex than anything that's put forward in polytheism, even collectively. So monotheism would be by far the loser there.
Well, one could argue that even
clarification for Ocean.
The clarification I wanted to give you is that I'm not saying must in this situation. There's definitely other, like, if you could make another conclusion on the basis of, hey, there's many different people describing experiences with gods, but the default from that is going to be that the descriptions are honest when you're dealing with people that are otherwise rationally minded human beings.
But Ocean, what is the argument that?
Hold on, Steve. Can I just add just one thing? So Ocean. So just to clarify, if you're not saying must versus may, then you would agree that polytheism could be false under what you're saying. It could be false.
Of course, I have always held the position that polytheism could be false.
You have
it's easy to imagine a world in which polytheism is false. You could imagine a naturalistic world, correct? So, or a materialist world. I disagree with that because of these experiences that not only have I had, but many other people have had. So, I'm willing to go that route and say, hey, polytheism should be the default in this situation and is a strong position to hold, especially theistically. Among other theisms, it is the strongest of the theistic positions.
Okay, so why couldn't somebody argue from a monolatry point of view, which is like Ocean, it's not Ocean, General Han Solo's position, right? He follows monolatrism. Monolatrism.
General is philosophically holding a polytheist position.
Yeah, that's what. Well, he's holding a henotheistic position.
He's just saying that one of them is the one he likes a lot.
You can call it a polytheistic. I prefer the henotheistic. I think it's more applicable. Whatever. It's nuanced, right? It is a form of polytheism in a way, right? So I'm okay with that. But I mean, even if is there a thing you can say where the Christian God, even though it's considered to be a monotheistic religion, in a way they're all polytheistic, because I mean the Christian God, the stories talk about other gods. Now, what you want to label a god, that's kind of the question. I mean, do you want to call this God or not?
That depends on the Christian.
Exactly. I agree.
Some people say that the other gods that are talked about in the Bible aren't actually gods that exist. That they're either demons or they're describing nothing. Like the story with Baal.
Egypt.
But is it just a labeling thing at that point? I mean,
yeah, because the God were real.
If Baal doesn't actually exist, they think that there's a story in the Bible that suggests that Baal is just a rock. So, and that story is trying to say that these gods aren't even worthy of worship because they don't actually exist. That's the whole point.
Hold on. Remember the demonstration in front of Pharaoh where Pharaoh's people, they threw the staff and it turned into a snake, and then Moses threw his.
You're playing with the big boys now.
Yeah, so I'm trying, but that's what I'm trying to say. It seemed like
the Bible seems to acknowledge the Egyptian gods in that situation, right? So.
Yes.
Maybe the Bible agrees with me.
I was never told that. Growing up, I was told that was just dark magician stuff. There wasn't actually gods there.
The Talmud specifically says that each of the 10 Commandments was meant to embarrass a specific Egyptian god.
I don't know if I ever read any of that. I never read that. But Ocean, another thing. I can't remember which New Testament book it was, where I can't. Who was it that was going to the? It was in Rome somewhere where they had all of these different altars for different gods, and there was one for an unknown god. And like the Romans were worried that they might have missed a god, and it was for any unknown gods.
Well, that has to do with the Romans.
No, I believe that was in Greece. That was Paul.
Oh, okay. I can't remember the source.
But Greece was Roman at the time.
You know,
So,
okay, yeah.
Oh, let me explain that. Jesus. So the Romans had a position about gods that was that they didn't know who they all were, and when they went into new territory, they found new ones. So let's say that when they invade Britain, they found the Morrigan, they found the Dagda, they found all these other gods that they worshipped. So they would incorporate those gods into their pantheon because the Roman perspective was, we have these gods, there are others that other people worship. And one of the strengths of Roman multiculturalism was that when they found new religions, they would be adopted into the Roman pantheon. So the Dagda and Morrigan would become Roman gods. And so they had a shrine to those gods that are unknown to them. And you could make offerings to the unknown gods because the legions would be in places that are outside of the empire at the mercy of gods that they weren't familiar with. So giving alms to those gods was supposed to be a fix for that.
We spoke his name, and you know what happens? He shows up because that's how it works with the great Robert is love, Robert is life.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Real quick before I ask, we get General here because he obviously wants to respond to what we said earlier. But Ocean, you know what I find interesting is that the same argument you're using for justification of believing in gods is the same thing that a lot of Christians use for a monotheistic God. I don't see the difference, and that's not a bad thing against you. That's just saying, look, if a Christian says, I pray to God and this happens, and I attribute this to a deity, why is it any different than you saying? People pray and do this, and I'm attributing it to more than one deity. I don't see how one argument is any different than the other.
It's even worse. Billions of Christians driven into it. Like he was making the argument of a couple of hundred people makes it strong, but we got
that's
2
not
or
what
3
I said.
billion people kind of making these same claims.
That's just say this. Out of the gate. Hold on, no, because this guy's is fucking with me, and I'm going to fuck with him back. Because when I say that there's that the religion is growing, that doesn't mean that it's fucking true. That simply means that
there's an argument at populum, isn't it?
Kaiser, shut up.
God fucking damn it. What is with these people? All right. So when you have when I'm saying that the religion is growing, and it's growing because it's growing out of a group of people that are all Christians and that are all having the same experiences, and then moving into it's an argument from multiple experiences. It's not an argument ad populum. It's not saying most people believe it, therefore it's true. It's saying here's a group of people out of a civilization that shouldn't have this religion, that are suddenly having this religion. And that's something that's interesting. It doesn't mean that it's true.
Yeah, that's not an argument ad populum.
Ocean,
I mean, I created
just to respond to that. I want to be very clear. Ocean, your argument, and you said it just now. You said multiple people are having these experiences. Now, you may not be making an argument from ad populum, but if you're telling me maybe it's 1,000 people, maybe it's 10,000 people, and if I tell you, well, in this other case, 2 billion people are reporting having these experiences, it just makes me more comfortable with going with the 2 billion than the smaller group. Now, I understand that the smaller group is going. I'm just trying to expand the logic that you've put forth into the perspective of, okay, well, Christianity, these people are saying they're having these same kind of shared experiences, billions of them. It seems a lot more rational to believe them than it would be to believe a smaller group. Not to say either one are true, but it's just that's
what
just
I'm saying is
we
should take the people that are having experiences, Christians included, and because I think that the Christian God is a God. Like that's been my position for some time. So if the Christians are definitely worshiping something, they're clearly having spiritual experiences, but I don't think that they're describing their God in a way that is accurate. They're describing their God as the only one, this all-powerful being, the creator, all these things. Like it's.
So you're saying that Christianity might be one of the many just to add to the fold.
I think that Christianity is mistaken and incoherent. Like the religion itself is.
I think General may have a couple of things to say about that.
Well, General is probably more on my page than you are.
A God exists regardless. When you look at Ocean's Facebook statuses, they're just so brilliant and perfect.
You know what's kind of
I've got several comments on my Facebook
from
all
you guys
from General.
I think all you guys
saying that kind of thing. It's funny.
I think everybody that has a theologian person, especially if you're a theist, I think everybody has their own way of evaluating certain things. I think if there's one truth out there, everybody has a little piece of it. General has his version, Ocean has your version. There's something that maybe it comports to, but the problem is it's hard to differentiate who has the better interpretation of what's actually there.
Well, this whole notion of monotheism. Do you know the word monotheist actually originates in like the 1700s? It wasn't even a term used in first century Christianity.
Was it just something assumed?
It wasn't even thought of. In fact, when it was coined by a polytheist, monolatrist position of Yahweh. And then you talk about fundies. They came in and stole that word and used it for their own advantage.
Okay, so according to that word, though, as it's commonly used, do you consider Christianity to be a monotheistic religion, or are you calling it monolatry, where you do acknowledge the existence of other gods, which is allowed for in Christianity, but you worship one? Because it all matters how you define these things, and I don't care either way. It makes no difference to me. Christianity is generally defined one way, but if somebody says, "Yeah, I'm a Christian, but I do acknowledge other gods," I don't think that's inconsistent with early Christianity.
If you went to Moses and you said, "Hey, Moses, are you a monotheist?" Like, let's just, for the sake of argument, he understands what you mean by the word monotheist. He would say, "Yeah," and then you said, "Okay, those Egyptian gods that that Yahweh was fighting against, are they just stones and rocks?" Confused.
Okay, so I get that.
There are other legitimate gods.
It asks for a follow-up question: is why are these other gods in existence?
Because of this whole notion of the divine council that is revealed in the scriptures, that some of those members became rogue, and God disinherits the people to be under those particular deities, and hence.
So there's a bunch of gods. God was the creator of all those other gods, and then some of them just kind of went, "Screw you."
Yeah, through free will. Yeah.
I thought he only gave free will.
Basically, they wanted to be like him in some sense. They wanted
I guess he gives angels free will. They rebelled, so.
I mean, yeah, a third of them rebelled. I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 1/3 thing is a little bit of it's nowhere mentioned.
Wait, are you sure about that?
Yeah, you're thinking of Revelation 12. Revelation 12 has nothing to do with that. But
okay, I have to reread Genesis then.
It's curious that, like Job, so for example, Job is a discussion amongst the gods on this particular person named Job. So this is quite interesting. Pretend you're an ancient Near Eastern person having the same type of discussions you and I have today in relation to the big questions of life. Back then, they would think about it in terms of what's happening upstairs is the reason why things are happening down here. So, as the story says, you have this council of gods and Yahweh, the main guy. They're having a discussion, and so Yahweh's like, "Okay, certain things will happen to Job, and let's see what happens." And so that's the discussion.
General, are you agreeing that Christianity?
Hang on, guys. Wait, please. Everybody's getting mod control. Anybody who comes in this room, kick them out. Anybody who comes in the next.
What's happening?
We're getting good.
Yeah, what's the deal with all these? Me and Marcus have been dropped like 4 or 5 times in the last 30 minutes.
That's the glitch.
Yeah,
everybody's on a mobile device.
We have a sniper coming in, so if you don't know who this, actually, I mean, if somebody comes in that we know, maybe, but actually just delete everybody that comes in from here on out. Everybody's getting mod control. I actually have the external open as well. So if anybody comes in this room, just kick them right out. First come, first serve. Okay.
So, General, I just want to know: is there a difference between angels and gods in your view?
No.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the word Elohim literally means place of residence. So
okay, because
you have
these other people can't come in. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is critical.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Can we get a person to come in and take up the last spot, please? Anybody volunteer? Then I'll give the name, and that way we don't kick that person from the live chat.
So who is this person coming in?
It's down corner. He's a sniper. So on the live
Put
chat,
him on a list, I guess.
Oh, he is. He's on the wiki for sniping. Yeah.
How the heck did he get the
Van the Man? All right, Van the Man, can you message me on
General, just out of curiosity, real quick question. What about the existence of the word polytheism? I mean, how long has that word been around?
Roughly the same time as when. So don't forget, these are relatively new, like, terms. Talking within 400 years.
General, would you consider Christianity to be polytheistic as the word kind of describes? And if not, why?
I'm sorry. I'm seriously sorry. Thought my mic was muted.
Is that the guy, John Johnson?
No, his name is Van. Van the Man. That's what we're waiting for.
I wouldn't. I think.
Thank you, Van.
Okay, I think these are words that just they're not filling. So polytheism is like half the story. Monotheism is again half the story. So it is a polytheistic, monotheistic religion. You have a pantheon of gods, but then, so you have a pantheon of Elohim, but no other Elohim is like this particular Elohim, because this particular Elohim is eternal. He's got the attributes of omniscience and, you know, all that stuff. So, but curiously in Job, going back to the Job story, about halfway through in Job 15, they start contemplating that Job, you're suffering. Yes, there's this discussion going upstairs, and you know, there's maybe a test going on. But then they start contemplating the nuance of, say, in life by people on earth, and there could be like a reflection, like as in heaven, so on earth, sort of, you know, in that context. What if the plights that Job's suffering through right now, what if that's also simultaneously happening in the heavens? It mentions that God himself doesn't trust his own angels.
General,
like none of them, not even the good ones.
General, I'm sorry. I was gonna say anything, but I'm not understanding this monotheistic, polytheistic. It's both. You know, maybe somebody else does, but I'm not understanding how can I was assuming if it's either monotheistic or it's polytheistic. I didn't think it could be both.
It's who are you worshiping? Are you worshiping Yahweh? Well, then in this context you're a monotheist, but keeping in mind you are a monolatrist. You know that these other gods exist. So for example, to make it very easy, like say Allah, right? I firmly believe in some sense, I don't know what his actual name is, or you know what this entity could be, that label alone, Allah of Islam, yeah, he exists. Allah, in the Israelites' frame of mind, you're not a monotheist, you're a polytheist, because you're affirming a lesser Elohim, an actual ontological entity, in the midst of many other Elohim, but you've chosen this particular lesser Elohim to be this object of worship.
John, I'm not sure how you're really differentiating between monolatrism and henotheism. I'm not seeing your distinction.
Because in this context, this ontological entity is a creature, and this creature is no different to any of the other divine creatures. But one particular entity that is eternal and completely unique in that sense in this case would be the God of Israel. And so therefore, if you worship this particular entity, then you are truly, hear Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Like he's, now you're affirming monotheism.
So as long as you're worshiping the top guy, like if you're worshiping any of those other lower guys, you're a polytheism. But if you're with the top guy, even though you can say these other guys exist, but since you already know, I know who the top guy is.
So the no true God, right? Whatever God you think is the top God. No, I'm just kidding. So I get your distinction now. I get your distinction now. Well, that's kind of what it's way, but
there's actually kind of a
God, not your God.
This is almost like a tier level type thing. That's the only way I could really wrap my head around. Is just thinking.
But it is. It's exactly that.
At least he
it is
differentiated. I can understand his differentiation now.
The difference between henotheism and
there's
monotheism
actually
is really subtle, but
there's a interesting story in and stuff about when Moses went to the Israelites, or when God commanded him to go to the Israelites, and Moses asked, but what shall I tell them that your name is? And he says, essentially in the ancient Hebrew, he says, I am Elohim, the one. There's kind of a backstory to that in kind of Hebraic lore, that the Israelites were already worshiping him, but they were worshiping two other gods along with Yahweh. And they were worshiping the gods of the gods that the story of Nimrod and Semiramis were based on. And it was, a Nimrod, who was a brother of Yahweh, and Nimrod's wife, Semiramis. And they were a Trinity deity that the Israelites were worshiping. And so when Moses asked Yahweh, well, which one are you? And Yahweh said, I am Elohim, the one. And then later on, they attributed the Yahweh to him. Just an interesting kind of backstory with why in the story Moses asked him which one he was, is because the Israelites in actual, the Israeli, the Hebrew text and stuff, there was actually three gods. They were never monotheistic.
Now, Marcus, that's pretty interesting, because I actually thought, because I know I'm actually taking you as your word, because I don't know, this is actually new to me, but I actually thought just how I thought about it was the reason he asked which god he was because of his Egyptian upbringing. I actually thought that. You could be right. I'm probably all right.
That is true too. But in if you ever read the book of Enoch, tells a lot about the different gods and whatnot, and what happened between God and the angels also. But no, I mean, Moses possibly would have believed in the Egyptian gods, but the the enslaved Israelites would have never have taken on the Egyptian gods. They would have actually the original three deities that that Abraham and also all the way down the line down to Adam actually believed in.
I personally, I'm not aware of what Marcus is getting at. I mean, if you mention Enoch, like, I'm sure you're aware that Enoch is...
Yeah, that doesn't exist.
Is very, like, as far as Israelite monotheism goes, like, it's very orthodox. It's not... in fact, Enoch was, like revered. And I mean, the New Testament quotes from Enoch. And the early church refers to Enoch.
Yeah, have you read the book of Enoch?
Does Enoch exist? I didn't know Enoch existed.
I think the Book of Enoch is probably one of the more interesting books that's not part of the canonical, Bible.
Yeah, I mean, it technically was. That's the funny thing. It technically was. It's just that, like, I think in the 3rd century AD, it started to just die out. And
I mean, the Bible's only been edited, edited, given to kings so that they could pick what they like and edit it again. And yeah, that's the Bible.
In the Catholic Catholic Britannica, it actually documents that at the First Council of Nicaea, they removed the Book of Enoch
Well, looks like I'm going to have to read the book of Enoch.
They essentially slipped up in
Not a nice way.
in the New Testament.
Yeah, I read that too.
It briefly mentions the book of Enoch in the New Testament.
I'll have to read it then.
The
least
only time Enoch was slowly dying out was during Tertullian, when Tertullian was writing about how it's the church at large, because of not only the distribution of, say, what's included in the New Testament, but also the political context and the theology of. So what the so-called Protestant canon was like everything you needed to live by, your principles and so on, and the theology was already, that's everything you need to know, because there's even Enoch within that. So essentially, and not quote unquote preserved in its copies. Only the Ethiopic Christians were the ones who maintained that tradition. So basically, you could call it laziness. Majority of the church just became lazy in regards to usage of Enoch, and so that's why it died out.
That's
But
very strange.
I don't know where you're getting
the book of Enoch is highly prophetic.
No, it's actually it's as of the last 10, 20 years, it's considered now a bridge to Mesopotamian studies, especially when we go back, say, to the Sumerian literature and understand the Avkalu traditions and all that. So Enoch has actually now become a very important source of like a bridge between, because even though Enoch is like, for some reason in that book by the pseudo author, he somehow maintained a library of information that he may have collected, or I don't know, traditional or maybe oral memory, that there's a lot of things missing pre-Babylon era, so the Babylonian exile, and Enoch is that bridge. And so Enoch has become an interest in academia. But through that's my point. Through that, Nimrod and Yahweh, I haven't come across that. That seems.
I thought Nimrod was a king or something. Wasn't he a ruler?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where he's getting that from.
I don't know. I'm not even bothered to look it up. But I thought.
The Nimrod was the
you Nimrod.
I believe was the grandson of Seth, and he is at least in the Bible we know is now, he was responsible for the building of the Tower of Babel.
Tower of Babylon?
But he was.
Wait, the Tower of Babel was built by people. Like literally, it was a
Babel.
Okay.
Yeah, but Nimrod was the king. He was the king that acquired the plans for the Tower of Babel from Seth, who carried it on the ark through the flood.
That sounds familiar to me.
But isn't it?
Yeah.
Concerning the Tower of Babel, they were saying, I know some Christians believe that it's like was the tallest structures humans could ever make. But back then, with the technology that they were using, there was like certain height limits that they couldn't reach. Like they couldn't create a temple as large as the Empire State Building because steel is lighter and those type of things, right? It was like that would have been something that's impossible to have created.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Yeah.
I've never thought of that. So that thing really wasn't that tall.
Yeah, it's a ziggurat.
Yeah, but you got to talk about back in the day, the tall, something.
We're talking like
something as tall as something as tall as like 10, 15 stories to the person back then. Of course, the average person back then was like what, 4'8".
Yeah, but it's not.
No, it wasn't.
They were that short. They weren't that short.
It's not.
They're pretty short.
There's like
engineering. A building of any height, you get over 10 stories, so it's like, whoa, that's a big building.
But are you familiar with ziggurat theology though? Like, why did they build ziggurats?
But then no.
Yeah, but how tall do you think the building, the structure could have been based on the technology back then, General? Because I know general.
They wouldn't have been very tall. I mean,
well, but
for
the pyramid.
example,
Wait, with the
for
pyramid.
example,
General, if the pyramids were 50 stories and they were building a Tower of Babel, wouldn't they have been higher than the pyramids?
Well, look at what has to go to build the pyramids, though, Steve. You got to have a solid stone structure that's extremely wide at the base. I mean, these people would have to know really how tall the thing can get by how wide the base would be, and I don't know. The whole thing about the pyramids were solid stone. It is
right, but that's not my question. My question is, building a tower is supposed to be extremely high, and they've already built something. Or was this before? Well, this was actually the Tower of Babel would have been long before the pyramids, right?
I would say, yeah, it would be. Yeah.
There's the notion of a ziggurat. So, for example, Jacob's ladder, when it describes angels ascending and descending, well, Jacob's ladder was a ziggurat. The ziggurat doesn't even need to be as big as the pyramids. Like you could have like a quarter of the size of a pyramid, and you can build a quote unquote tower to heaven. The point is that you're wanting to bring God down to you rather than allowing God to be where He is, so to speak. And so it's another divine uncoupling in the Genesis story. So there's three falls. You have Genesis 3. The fall in the garden. Then you have Genesis 6, which is the fall between that divine human interrelationship with the Nephilim. And then you have Genesis 11, which is another fall. And so this...
General, you're really just saying that it doesn't matter what the height was, because the true meaning of it was their disobedience to God, them wanting to reach God in that particular manner. But I don't know. I think it does matter, because I think when you talk to most Christians, they would say that this was the tallest structure generally created by man.
No, it wasn't.
And even though they may be mistaken, I'm just theorizing on the architecture and the engineering of that time. How tall could that structure have considerably been? I don't think it could have been that tall.
So we can actually go to what's known as the Ur-3 dynasty period, and actually see the kings in the Ur-3 dynasty period speak about a quote unquote ziggurat to the gods. But the gods did not favor that, and so they confused the tongues of men.
What dynasty? Which area of which dynasty? What area we're talking about?
So in Sumer, we're talking roughly 3000 BC.
No, I mean what area? What I'm talking about? What geographic area we're talking about? I don't know that dynasty.
In Sumer. So
okay. Oh, I'm just okay. Sumer. I'm sorry.
North of the Persian Gulf. So
well, I'll say this: like even here in the United States, the tallest brick building is in Chicago, and everybody agrees that that's the tallest you can get with that type of material. You have to get steel to get higher, and that's how we've gotten higher with steel, particular type of steel. But brick buildings and stone buildings couldn't get but a certain height, because they started sinking and it became too heavy after a certain height. So now, and I think that's just science. I'm not even arguing that wouldn't hold in certain places. That's just what we know.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then the Tower of Babel couldn't have been as I'll even give it the building in Chicago, if that's possible. But even building that building took a lot of engineering that we've just recently found out about. So back then, you would agree that we're talking about at most a 10 to 15 to maybe even 20-story built structure at best.
Let's say if it was
one second.
Got a point. That's probably why it fell.
No, 1 second. So, if you're going to read the text like that, it's no wonder that you have people like Zachariah Sitchin who go way off a tangent saying, well, to really reach the heavens means that they were building a rocket. And
I don't think anybody is going that far.
Is my objection not silly? No, I'm saying, is my objection not silly? Is my thought really that ridiculous?
I don't think it
is. 1 second. So I'm saying, if you have an ancient Near Eastern scholar walk into a Sunday school classroom where the Sunday school teacher's like, yeah, they were building a building as big as they could, and for some reason that upset God. Like, why would God be upset with
I'd be amused.
You wanting to build
hey,
a building? If you understand the whole notion of what a ziggurat symbolized, and hence you see ziggurats right throughout, like Jacob's ladder is a ziggurat, That's the context. It has nothing to do with the size of the building or going to like maybe God stopped them because they're going to suffocate themselves when they reach too high or something. That is not the context of the passage.
General, I agree. That is definitely not the context of the passage. But two things I think implicated. Number one is that we know for a fact that using the materials of the day, the building height could have only been so high. So to reach heaven would have been something that was fantastical, because based on what we know today, that would have been impossible. I think the second implication of it is it really doesn't matter how high the building is. I was just making a statement of fact that the materials that they were using back then had to limit the size of the building to a structure that was 15 to 20 feet.
Denying
that.
Hold on, General. I think are you saying that like if they built it like that, they would be in like a different plane, or if they got so high they'd like go into a different existence or plane or something?
Being built in a certain
That's what I was. That's what I was just about to go into.
It doesn't matter how tall it is; it's the shape it was in. That's what matters in the story.
So size doesn't matter.
That's what I've been told. That's what I hope.
Well, here's what.
Wait. Do you
yeah.
guys even know what a ziggurat looks like?
I was assuming a winding staircase or.
Would you accept the definition of a stepped pyramid?
Exactly. It's a step. What does a step pyramid do?
Okay, all right.
The very first pyramid built, right? What's it called? The step pyramid of Giza. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Oh no, I don't think it's Giza.
It's the oldest one we have access to.
Yeah. Well, okay, one of the most earliest ones. But it was a step type pyramid, right?
Now, why do these people build a step pyramid? For what function?
For function, I don't know, but I know it's a significantly easier engineering.
I would imagine.
Than like the Great Pyramid, or even just a standard.
Probably be faster to build than a Great Pyramid all the way up to the sky. Honestly.
No. Again, a step pyramid. What at the top? At the top of the step.
Because don't forget, if you're building with blocks, it's naturally going to come out to a step pyramid.
To walk up to the top.
Well, hold on. Let General go.
I'm trying to give you guys these, in their thinking, in their minds, the supernatural context. So on the top of a ziggurat, you have a flat, like literally a flat block on the top of it, and then you have the steps. Now, in their thinking, once they cap that, once it's finished, now the gods can descend down, and they descend on this platform and walk down the steps. They believed.
Yeah, the god was supposed to meet them at the top, right? That was the highest point.
So that's the Babel story. The Babel story is so we can quote unquote reach the heavens. So basically, what's the heavens?
Not as in touch, reach as in communicate with, or
yes,
get a radio signal to.
Here's something that I was taught growing up, and I actually believed it, obviously, until I deconverted and things got added onto it, and about the Tower of Babel. And so you all familiar with the pictures of the spiral tower going up through the clouds kind of thing,
Yeah.
Here, compiled from the Bible, ancient Hebrew texts, and stuff like the Book of Enoch. This is historical, all compiled together. This is what I was taught, was that the spiral tower wasn't so that you could climb up to see the gods. It was a device that was meant to jump realms from the physical realm into the supernatural realm. And the idea behind it was to jump into heaven. And there was something about these ancient Babylon tablets that were discovered or something that mentioned something like this. But pretty much the idea was that the tower spiraled wasn't to climb up the tower. It was a device to actually use sunlight to power this device in the bottom of the tower, and like some orb, you could almost say, or like some demonic orb that was you could power up, and it would create a portal between earth and heaven. And that the people who built the tower, the lore, you could say, literally say, come help us build this, and we will step into heaven. was what was being said. And so I grew up with the belief that the Tower of Babel was never to climb up into heaven. It was actually a ancient, like, demonic device, or almost like a device left by the Nephilim, that if you powered it up, if you had the structure that could capture the sunlight and to power it up and stuff, it would open a portal and you'd walk right into heaven.
Yeah, this is so close to the Zachariah Sitchin stuff. That
I was funny you bring up Zachariah Sitchin. I actually had a conversation about him recently. I was into him massively for like 3 years, 20 odd years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. What did you
Sounds
guys?
like a movie to date.
What did he do for you?
Oh, I love that movie.
Like what?
I have no idea what you're saying. Hold on, fellas. I can't hear General.
So, Savannah, what did you read or what did you do to come out of the Zitchin cult?
I was never really into it. I just thought it was neato.
Oh, okay. I see.
Real quick, man. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Real quick on the Zachariah Sitchin thing. Now, what I remember when I was reading Velikovsky, that Immanuel Velikovsky formulated some of his criteria that eventually went into the EU theory from Stitchin's writings. Have you ever heard anything like that?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I actually ended up using Zachariah Sitchin stuff as the basis for a role-playing game.
But you never got as far as Velikovsky?
I've never heard of him. I mean, I've heard the name, but...
He wrote Rules in Collision.
Okay.
Shitty book, trust me. It's kind of like the Atlas Shrugged version of philosophy. It's just crap.
Zachariah Sitchin honestly struck me as a better storyteller than Von Däniken.
Yeah, but Stitchin's thing was that he claimed to be able to speak or read at least Sumerian, right?
Well, all of the ancient languages.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
No reason to think he could.
Eric von Däniken, I just think was an absolute quack that twisted, data to suit his narrative, and of course to the exclusion of anything that was contrary, that showed him to be completely full of shit.
Yeah, I did know some people that were, like General said, in the cult of Sitchin. And I keep talking to them like, how why do you think this is true? And they were just like, but because duh.
Yeah, I kid you not, I still have my uncle, even to this day, try and take me on, like he try and push Sitchin onto me.
I mean, yeah, it's like their mission, literally.
It's crazy.
They've been taught from birth that it's literally their mission to go and bring people to their religion. So, what do you expect?
Well, no.
And apparently, Nibiru was meant to hit us on the 23rd of September. What's happened? Nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Oh, wow.
It happened. You just didn't see it.
At least it's
until next month.
You brought up earlier about Seth carrying the plans for the tower on the Ark.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoy talking with young Earth creationists, specifically for one question. How many years passed between the Ark of the Noah's Ark and the building of the pyramids?
Yes, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
I think
how they populate.
what I was told was somewhere between 800 to 1200 years.
According to Usher's timetable, it's significantly less, because Usher did the ages of people.
It would have to be. It would have to be really.
I actually thought it was less too. I actually
I'm talking
thought
like
it
200
would
to
be
400 years, if I remember right.
Well, maybe the circles I was in were a bit more logical and realized that you need way more time than that to build any kind of civilization that could build the pyramids.
Didn't God get pissed at the Tower of Babel and be like, "Hell no, knock it down"?
Yeah.
Well, that's in the story that even I believed in a couple of years, years ago.
Come to think of it, I didn't think, was the Tower of Babel knocked down, or was it I thought it was abandoned.
It was destroyed by God. God destroyed that.
Oh wow!
He was like offended that they were trying to reach heaven or something. Is what I got from it.
No, the actual condemnation that's stated is that they were too good at working together, and he was worried that they could accomplish anything And so he said, "Screw that," and split them across the surface of the earth.
I thought he like made it to where they all spoke different all their languages got factions.
That's how he split them. He gave them all different languages so they couldn't work in harmony anymore.
So it wasn't destroyed. So, Carrie, you're saying it wasn't destroyed?
I wasn't taught that it was destroyed. I was taught
I
it was
was
abandoned.
taught that it was destroyed.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
told.
I was never taught that it was destroyed. In fact, I still know people to this day that believe that somewhere out in the desert somewhere is the partially built Tower of Babel.
Yeah, there is a structure that they say is part of the Tower of Babel. It's still
So wait, what I'm wondering is if Moses, or not Moses, Noah was like a lifeline to God, how Seth didn't know sooner that the Tower of Babel was a bad idea.
The lore that I was told was that the plans for the Tower of Babel were actually passed through Methuselah, and there was a close relation between Methuselah, Enoch, and those plans having been stolen from the Nephilim back in the time. And one of the reasons that God caused the flood was to wipe out humanity before they could build the Tower of Babel. So the Tower of Babel being built after the flood was actually the second attempt at it.
That's
I'm actually getting giggles out of this. I'm thinking more and more. Yeah.
What is this crazy?
The lore that's generated is pretty crazy. It'd make a great sci-fi movie, or like a great TV show.
They need to make a TV show.
They need study the stories and the myths from the Jewish Talmud, because they have an oral tradition where all of this is explained in Jewish mythology, and all of these ideas are essentially how they interpret the scriptures. It's their hermeneutics. It's how they interpret all the scriptures, and they have some fantastic stories. Magic, wizards, everything.
I mean, that's if that's the case. Marcus, with all due respect, I personally haven't come across that there's this thing of the plan through Seth or something, and
they all
there's like a remaking of it. Yeah.
Be on the watch for anyone coming in who's not supposed to be.
Yeah, they're fine.
And we're back. Sorry about that. Must be a phone quake. Sucks.
Oh, good. It was.
But I guess for Marcus specifically, if you're interested in that context, and a good article, but it's dated. I mean, it was written in the 70s. The guy's name is Edward Lipinski, and the title of the paper is Mountains of El, where he basically goes through antediluvian worship of the gods, but from a non-biblical context. Then he does get into the Bible a little bit, so Genesis 6, and the whole flood context, and then he goes into Babel.
Yeah, Tony, I've got to admit, I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I'm sorry about that, General. I did this at the same on Tony's avatar. I've got to admit, I didn't have any paper around, and I've done that once or twice.
Yeah, that's the old Genesis 1 joint.
By the way, Steve.
Yes, sir.
So what's been happening with the young creationists? Like any updates?
Okay. Well, I mean, Jerry Brown. Or it's not Jerry Brown. Jerry Bergman's supposed to get back in touch with me, but he said he was going to be busy probably the second week of this month. We had. Let's see here. What else is going on? It's been really kind of dry with the young Earth creationists lately, to be honest with you.
Hey, Steve, how does it feel to be the middleman to the young Earth creationists? That's got to be one hell of a honor.
You mean like with Hovind?
No, just that you're like the middleman. Like we ask a question, hey, how the young Earth creationists doing?
Oh yeah, well I get kind of my shtick, I guess. I don't know.
That was a great show today too, by the way. That was awesome.
Oh well, I got.
Hillbilly.
Did you watch the Eric Wolfbitten Joel? He's not a young Earth creationist, but he has the mindset of one. Did you watch that? Because that was good.
It's all good. Today was a great day for lulls.
Those are two of my favorite videos for takedowns. Was the one with Eric Joel, and then this one with Christian Hillbilly, because he's just.
I called it in the comment. I called it in the comment room that this will probably be like one of the best.
I wasn't here for Hillbilly.
You missed it, man. You would have.
Well, let me take a guess.
Yeah, you should go back and You should go back
I'm
and listen
gonna
to
watch
it
it
because
later,
it's great.
but I'm gonna make a few predictions right now.
Okay, I go for it. I want to hear this.
Hillbilly used to be a pure evidentialist, and of late, I've encountered him several times on Discord lately, and he's gone pre-sup. Let me guess, when you had and it was an argument on morality, correct?
Yes.
Let me guess, he went, well, how can you account for the laws of logic?
No, laws of logic
he
we
didn't.
mentioned once.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But
Next prediction.
He would have though.
Steve, I don't understand. Like, isn't what he was saying just like basic divine command theory stuff?
No, his whole thing is basically obstructionism. I mean, he wants to obfuscate the conversation. He doesn't want to actually narrow down his belief. He doesn't want to say yes or no. He doesn't want to have any closed questions. He wants.
Well, how do you account for this?
Yeah, I mean, he did bring that up a little bit.
But I do think he was the divine command theory because
he did mention that a bit.
But the problem is he doesn't.
He has denied it.
Yeah, the problem is he does subscribe to divine command theory, but he doesn't want the baggage that goes along with it because he doesn't know how to reconcile it.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
I mean, if you want to ask somebody to reconcile it, go talk to like Max Hangs Out. He also is a divine command theorist, but he at least has a way to reconcile it. I don't agree with his position, okay, but it's at least an attempt to reconcile. But of course, Max has a master's degree in this, so I'd expect a better argument from him than I would from frickin' Hillbilly, right?
If ever there was a more appropriate name.
No, seriously, right? Well, I mean, I don't think you can have dumb fuck as a G+ title. That's why.
I'll try. Give me a minute.
Yeah, they might not like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you could though.
If you do though, Steve, you're gonna have Red's pretty pissed off because he would want first dibs for somebody else in his faction.
Yeah, this is true.
I mean, it just sounded like things I've heard before. So I mean, it's not like it's exclusive to Hillbilly. Like, you know, things like, oh well, God couldn't command that something evil, for example. Something I've heard before.
Well, I mean, he doesn't have the ability to actually understand actual arguments. He just doesn't get it. I mean, like Ocean has very good arguments for well, I should say they're good arguments, but they're at least interesting arguments. People could have a discussion with Ocean, whether they agree with him or not.
Ocean has rational reasons for his belief.
Well, hold on.
I disagree with his reasons, but they're rational.
Well, his reasons, let's just be honest. His reason is if you can't prove it's false, it could be true. That's all he's really saying.
That is not Ocean's argument at all. That's not even close. That's an argument.
There's nothing like he says that.
Yeah, that's an argument from ignorance.
Okay, fine.
What?
He argues from personal
doesn't
experience.
So
He argues from personal experience and acknowledges that he could be mistaken.
Yeah, his argument is basically what does he think is the most appropriate explanation for his subjective things, and that's not an argument from ignorance.
Okay.
I mean, worst case, somebody might be able to toss out a God of the Gaps type argument, but even that, it wouldn't be a God of the Gaps because he's not.
Well, he's actually arguing for personal experience.
Right, and that's my thing as well. So I kind of empathize with him on this.
Yeah, you can't really do a God of the Gaps there because there's nothing objective there to make that gap shrink.
Yeah, he's not saying, look, I have no other explanation. It must be the gods. That would be an argument from ignorance.
No, but he's saying that this particular event that people claim that there's a God must, it should lead you to conclude that there's a God.
No,
that's where I think the gaps are at because he's drawing a conclusion from something that could be faulty. They could be having
he doesn't say that
he acknowledges that.
Reasons. Yes, and I think he does acknowledge it, but that's not a 50-50 split. You have to. Not his explanation is reasonable in that type of continuum.
Why not?
I'm sorry. Look, I was just saying the reason you really can't do a God of a Gas is because if you look at other God of Gaps arguments, they're always bleeding some way into an objective or something that can be prove. In other words, that gap can be shrunk over time. It's possible that gap to be shrunk over time, but I just can't see how that's happening in this arguments.
We all get quiet for a reason. That's unusual.
Yeah, I was just about to say. It's like everybody waits for someone to respond, and then everybody unmutes and responds at the same time.
Can't win. Anyways, whatever. General, did that answer your question? You haven't been around much, General.
You found more fun
He
people
left me
to play
again.
with.
I know.
He might be having a phone quake or something. I've been getting them a lot.
There's been a few today.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
I got to tell you this. I mean, the level of conversation in the last couple months, I think, has been gone up tremendously. I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying most of the discussions we've been having on multiple different topics, not only on my channel, but on the Great Debate Community channel as well. I've been finding them to be fascinating. I mean, Thaddeus has some pretty interesting hangouts. I mean, and he gets some very good conversation. The Ochi Wawa has been adding a lot to the conversation. MP joins in. This is the kind of thing that I wanted the Great Debate Community to have this level of discourse where theist, atheist, polytheist, whatever, talk about things on a level that isn't going back to the both fruit on the ground, Piltdown man kind of level shit. And I don't want it to be like Nadia's room. And so I think that we are moving in that direction at a very good pace, and I'm very happy. I'm thrilled to death. And you guys should be proud of yourself that you can have this, type of conversations, because you don't see it very many places. I mean, even in other communities, they're dead. They might have a lot of members, but our community is far more active than any other community that I know, and I'm in a lot of communities.
That's true. I mean, I have never seen any other live streams where so many theists, polytheists, and agnostics and such get on the exact same stream and they go back and forth. Usually so civilized as happens here. I've never seen that anywhere else.
It's a work in progress. I mean, we all get a little upset. We all, we have our moments. Not gonna deny that. But I think that overall, it's come a far cry from the initial types of hangouts that people were having long ago, long before I even got in the scene. That was just a shit fest.
That's true.
You guys remember things
well,
like
I mean, Steve, you know me, man. It took me a while to get the bullshit out of this jokester, because I love to joke around and prank around and bullshit. And it took a while for me to really get that out of the hangouts.
There's a time and a place for it.
Uh-huh.
Rum and Coke night.
Rum and Coke night.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Steve, isn't this usually rum and Coke night? I've been sitting here drinking up a storm here.
Oh, me too.
No,
I am, but I'm keeping it light. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm old. I can't recuperate it as fast as I used to be able to.
I'm in the room. I'm chilling right now. Everyone is at the bar right now drinking.
I got some rum left, but not much.
I feel old. Like I'm old now. Like I just split off from the group. I'm like, ooh, I got to go upstairs. I'm feeling like intoxicated.
But let me ask like people like MP. You have gone. You're the probably of anybody here has been over to other hangouts such as like Antonio's and Ronnie's and those guys who, by the way, we've gone several days without even bringing up their names. That's awesome. Because they're just insignificant to my channel. They really are. I mean, I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic. They just are anymore. I find it entertaining to talk about them.
Yeah, they're just wolves. They're fillers.
Yeah, I agree with you. But MP, how's the conversation in those rooms? And by the way, do you still go over there? Because you do pop in every so often, right?
Well, True has blocked me to be honest with you.
What?
He's blocked me. True has blocked me, so I am blocked by True empiricism.
Get out.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's just
You're like the 97th person. You're number 97.
Wow.
I'm number 97.
Wow.
So, yeah.
They blocked MP. They really are getting an echo chamber, aren't they?
Really?
MP was willing to go over and engage with them.
They're putting in that soundproof padding, dude.
We know it's not a racial thing. We know it's not a racial thing, so that's good.
No, it is racial. He was the last person to be blocked. So
there you go.
black.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh God.
I was blackballed.
Yeah, exactly. You weren't even good enough to
literally.
You weren't even good enough to block at the beginning, MP. You know.
That's true. Damn.
Oh, that's good stuff.
I wonder if I'm already blocked.
You know, let's play. You know what? Let's have some fun real quick. Let's play the "Are You Blocked" by Steve Shives game.
Oh, I'm blocked by Steve Shives.
I don't think I am.
Right there.
I'm not sure what that is.
I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, I'm gonna check.
I mean, if you wanna go through his old videos, there's a video where he reads one of my comments, and he honestly thought I was a fan for a while there.
Here's my little game. If you have a Twitter, go on your Twitter account, go to Steve Shives and tell me if he's blocked. I'm blocked on Steve Shives on Twitter.
I know for a fact I'm blocked. I
gotta have a bot.
His quote unquote loyal fans, and then all of a sudden he realized, oh shit, this kid's fucking with me.
No, he does have a bot.
Steve Shives has a bot.
Yeah, he has a bot. Oh yeah, no question. He said he does. Everybody in the live chat.
Well, if he has a bot, then
I
I'm
am
definitely
not
blocked because of the people I have. I'm following on Twitter.
You're not. No, I think the way to say it is, I'm not blocked yet.
I'm not blocked yet.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah, because he's a little special snowflake.
You put too much truth in, you're gonna get blocked.
Dude, I watched. I don't know who
somebody named Steve Shives' daddy.
I haven't seen it before, but I actually watched Jay's Kirk video.
Oh,
and TJ Kirk from the Drunken Peasants, Amazing Atheist.
Yeah, he does what's pissing me off today.
Yeah, he had a really amazing video on Steve Shives that's just extremely informative.
I have never. Sorry, I didn't. Okay. I have never met Steve Shives or talked to him or been in any hangouts, and I'm blocked.
Yeah, no, I
holy shit!
I didn't even know
half the room is blocked.
I would never want to meet Steve Shives in person. I bet he smells weird.
Breathing in their mic.
Honestly, like no, not trying to be mean, but
let me jump in. I apologize. I need to go ahead and take off. I will catch you later.
You guys want to come in to take your spot before you do?
Anyone?
See,
it's Marcus. It's Marcus.
If you want, I can open up an alternate, like one of my 30 Facebook accounts.
No, somebody would come in the live chat.
One of my 30 emails.
Just to see if they want to come in real quick. A little bit. It's like, stop talking about Steve Shives. Talk more about Ronnie. There's nothing to talk about with Ronnie. I had that video that I made. I gave him, something that I said. I think it was a pretty decent response to him, right? I mean, not very many people watched it though. So it doesn't get like 20,000 hits like a debate would. But did anybody watch my video? Probably not.
Yeah, I watched it.
Did somebody? Wow.
Short,
I watched it.
Okay, so you're pretty impartial, I guess. I mean, did I put forth my position pretty well to MP? And
I liked it. I thought you were very clear. I thought it was clean. But he was taking his month. I don't know if he started his month yet, but he was taking a month off. So
no, but he did say he was going to get back to me by Sunday of last weekend, which he didn't. Which is okay. I don't care. I don't want him to even make a response video. There's no need to.
It's hard to argue against facts. Here are the facts.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what. When Ronnie starts getting 130 people listening to his hangouts, I'll take notice again.
Yeah, right.
But until then, he just has an echo chamber that nobody wants to watch. Why would anybody?
Amazing how clueless you. I mean, just imagine being that disconnected to where you can actually spew out saying, "Why don't people come in my room?" Knowing that you've blocked everyone from coming into your room.
But I think that's a reason for that. The way he does it is what most of them do is okay, I challenge everybody, block everybody, and then say, "Oh, look, nobody took me up on my challenge because they're all scared." That's how he plays the game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's beautiful.
That's like every flat earther.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
exactly. Who said that? Because that's true. Who said that?
He knows me.
yeah, that's exactly the case. That's pretty much how every flat earther plays the game, right? You got shit arguments. That's how they go about doing it.
That's why I like Tim Osmond. He keeps them all in check.
Oh, dude, I miss Tim Osmond so bad. His Horgala videos.
He just made a video today.
Dude, I don't know. I wish he'd re-upload his Horgala videos. Those were the funniest ones I think I've ever seen him do.
Real quick, I'm going to be ending this pretty soon. I think we've kind of reached the end, and I can't find a filler. So, real quick, there's a person in the Great Debate community I've been talking to for like 2 days now. If you guys have been following along this discussion, Hellfire LWD, who thinks that I have not articulated my position as far as my theological position clearly. I have put a voting thing, and again, we don't settle things by votes, but votes are, I mean, obviously, I just want to know what people's opinions are. That's why I do polls, right? I put that my position that I think explains it fairly decently. He thinks it doesn't really tell him anything, which I find to be okay. Nelson's okay. I know Nelson. It just makes no sense because he's playing the fisherman fallacy type thing, where he wants to get a certain response rather than listen to what I have to tell him. So if you go to the Great Debate community, can you guys give us your opinion on that poll? And also, he has another poll that he put out, which makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It's mind-bogglingly strange. It's a weird poll. I don't know how it has anything to do with my arguments, but I pointed out to him the poll is malformed. Other people had pointed out the poll is malformed, but I want your guys' opinion. Be objective.
Yeah, I saw that.
Go put on there whether you think it's a formed poll or not. I think it makes no sense to me. There's only one answer I can possibly choose. His very first option is basically yes or no in one option. Well, that's law of excluded middle. Of course, that's going to be true. What does that even mean? Yes or no?
What if I'm neither?
No, you can't have.
There were a couple of them that I saw last week that were like that. They were so retarded that I just blanked from my memory. They were that stupid.
He's going for a goal. He's trying to get you to subscribe to one belief or another, and he doesn't want to accept that there's in-betweens.
I get you. No, I agree. That's what I'm saying. He's a fisherman fallacy. He basically wants me to subscribe to his belief.
I hate people like that.
And then understand what I'm putting forward.
Yeah, I'm heading up, guys.
Hi, General. And Mark, I'm going to mute you because you're still breathing in your mic. But the bigger thing is that he's been explained this by multiple people, and he's just not getting it, right? And so
he doesn't care.
I think, well, for example, the second option in his poll was clearly a problem because he was trying to put an epistemic modifier to a dosastic claim, and what that means is basically a knowledge to a belief claim. And if you look what he says, it makes no sense. So number two is definitely nonsensical. Now he says he wrote it that way on purpose to try to somehow invalidate my argument.
So he's being dishonest on purpose.
It sounds like he's being honestly dishonest.
It's weird because nothing he says makes sense.
So
he
just
said
like
something
a preacher,
stupid.
he's one of the most honest liars out there.
He said something stupid, realized it was stupid. You called him on it, and then he goes, "Oh wait, no, I meant to do it like."
I don't know what it is. I'm not, and I want some impartiality. I've actually called in moderators to go look. If my arguments are bad, by all means, people will shit on me for it. Okay, this has been a pretty recurrent thing. If I say something that's dumb or wrong, I'm going to get shit on. I would expect no less, right? But nobody's telling me that I've said anything incorrect, and nobody's saying that the poll makes sense. So I don't know what to tell this guy. I wanted to help him out, saying, look, you have some pretty stupid things that you're saying, but I don't know where to go with it at this time.
I would rather be stupid than dishonest, to be honest.
I think it's a combination of both, because if you go look at the poll, he's using the poll to try to disprove my position, but it's a complete straw man. He just doesn't understand the difference between knowing and believing. That was a good Freudian slip. And so he thinks that I'm telling people a knowledge claim. He actually said when I said in regards to temporal agnostic, which is basically the position that right now I don't believe people can know the existence of God or not, right? Just my belief. But he says that is an absolute statement, that if I say you cannot know now, he is saying that I am making an absolute statement that regarding reality that can never change. I'm like, no, that's just my belief. Beliefs are not absolute statements. That's insanity. He's taking it as a command statement rather than declarative. Right? I'm making a declaration that this is my belief rather than saying you can't do this. He doesn't understand.
Hence the word now at the end.
No, the now is the temporal part. He's taking the can't. He's taking,
right.
This. He's taking that as a command rather than just a declaration of my position that you can't. I don't believe you can know this now.
Is he trying to make you explain why you say you can't know it?
No, not really, dude. No, I don't think so. I mean, that'd be a fair question, but that's not where he's going with that. You have to just read the threads in the Great Debate community on it and weigh in on it.
Well, I am reading the question. It's just so weird. He's clearly using think to replace the word belief. I don't know why. So, like, if you just change the question to "Do you believe a deity of any kind exists?" it makes no difference if you say.
I could use think and believe interchangeably. To me, they're synonyms in this particular regard.
So essentially, do you believe a God of any kind exists? Yes or no?
That's the same thing. Do you think any kind of? I mean, to me,
but the problem is that if you didn't believe a deity exists, you could just say no, and if you did, you'd say yes. And there's one answer. That's it. You don't get to the next ones.
Wait, do you think he might be trying to PC the question or something?
Well, no, I think he's trying to pigeonhole.
But then, how does the no question or the no answer in the end there matter? Because he didn't ask about knowing; he asked about belief.
Dude, you're I have no idea. Again, I mean, and the third option is all of the above, which makes even less sense.
Which makes even less sense because you can't even get to the second one.
That's what I even put in the first two comments that exact same thing. I'm like, none of this makes sense to me. I did pick option 1 only for the fact that it is a true option, right? It is either yes or no, I guess. I mean, if you want to make that dichotomous, right? I mean, I don't even think that's true because I can say I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even voted number 1.
Wait, if he added all of the above, was he trying to say yes and no?
Yeah, that's his first option is yes and no. It's not even two different things. It's not like option 1 yes, option 2 no. So option 1 yes or no. What the hell does that even mean?
What?
Yes, I believe a God exists. No, I don't believe a God exists. No, I don't know, but yes, I believe. No, I don't know.
I don't know.
And no, I don't think a God exists.
I have a headache.
Yeah, you lost me, coach.
There are so many messed up formulations.
Your people know some idiots.
But anyway, go away on that, guys. It's at the it's on the Great Debate community page. So hey, by the way, Nelson, how are you? I just want to check up on you real quick. I haven't seen you for a while. Hope you're okay. Before I take you up there.
Just start
late, sorry, because I'm actually like ending this broadcast.
Okay.
Did you watch the first debate though, Nelson?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Thank you. Glad you liked it, man. So anyways, I'm wrapping this up. Anybody want the last word? I mean, I've kind of just summed it up and I just said everything I got to say. So who should I give the last word?
Pseudo will do it. Pseudo, give us
all
the
right,
last
Pseudo,
word.
you want the last word?
Yeah, I finally got in.
That's your last word?
No, it's not my last word.
I'm going to be nice today. What is your last word?
You want me to do it, Steve?
Oh, I don't care.
What's his last word? Hashtag Steve is gay for pseudo.
No, I'll give the last word to somebody else.
All right. How about, you know what? Nelson didn't get a chance, but Nelson, you want the last word?
There was a experiment, right? A neurological experiment where one half of the brain was atheist, one half of the brain was theist. Therefore, they're both true. Thank you very much.
There you go. Okay. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you later on.